a soft voice, so I do that on purpose, so you have to pay attention to me. I need the attention. My name's Mary Lee, and I serve as a consultant to TPF. It's my absolute pleasure to do so. And when I walked in here this morning, I was really frazzled, a lot of stuff going on, and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to hold on. And then just listening to the work that TPF does, to the work that all of you are doing, it calmed me down and lifted my spirit. So thank you I'll start this morning with a thank you for allowing me to be in your space. And I'm here with my dear colleague, friend, and comadre, Sylvia Castillo. And the two of us have been serving in this role of trying to provide some consulting services to TPF, but more importantly, to welcome TPF into a large and very historic just an array of community-based organizations, service providers, and caring individuals who've really tried to weather significant storms over and over and over again throughout South Los Angeles. And so we do a lot of things with TPF, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. We're sort of limited on time.
Yeah.
So we're going to focus on what we hope will be a little bit of context and background about South LA. But before I go too far, I'd love to introduce us so that you can have some idea of why we're even up here. So I'll let my colleague go first.
Well, I'm really honored to be here. You are not only people that will heal, but transform. And in this moment, it is about, and it always has been, about building power. And that's how I come into South LA. My name is Sylvia Castillo. I helped found an organization called Community Coalition about now 35 years ago. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how Mary and I began our work, because she's one of the founding folks. And I'll just say that in South LA, when we began, it was perceived that it was an African-American community only. But what we did in Community Coalition was we decided to organize the community. So the community, Mary, myself, are always trying to bring that history into whatever, any opportunity we have to be able to talk about South LA. So I am really pleased that I can stand up here, and I'm going to turn this back over.
Say a little bit more, because your background as a nurse, please, just a little.
Oh, okay.
Snap
Well,
lifelong, where you've lived and worked.
Okay, real quick, I come out of a time where people didn't have nonprofits to do community organizing. Nobody really knew what that was until President Obama talked about that, but we didn't have a gig. So what we did, including Mayor Bass, we were medical health workers. I was a nurse, she was a physician assistant, and during the time that we could sleep, which was probably 7 hours from the time we got home at 7 until midnight when we have to go back to work, we worked in South LA. And it was at the time, the crack epidemic, and I transitioned from being a nurse, because the impact of doing care one at a time, people need that. But I knew that our community organizing skill could engage hundreds and thousands of folks to be able to bring about change. So the last part of my introduction is that I've worked with the mayor as she was in the assembly when she was in the speaker assembly position, first African-American woman to be speaker. And when she transitioned to be a mayor, I just helped with that transition. And so I say that I am really pleased that I can stay grounded and to be able to have a hand in this and to know I'm building a relationship and I'm part of a community. So on that note, was that enough?
That was enough. That was enough. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of grounding about me too, because we don't want to just come up here and start talking and not have you guys know who we are. I'm born and raised in South Los Angeles, and I still live in South Los Angeles, happily and proudly so. I'm an attorney by profession. Now, Sylvia said we needed a day job, but I kind of combined my day job with doing social justice and criminal and social and civil rights work. I managed an office of Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles for many years. I worked for a statewide legal services group called the Western Center on Law and Poverty. All my clients were always very low income, indigent clients, and ultimately groups, because I started seeing, in much the same way that Sylvia mentioned, it's necessary to work for individuals, but if you can try to make systemic change, you end up serving a larger group at a time. So that's what we were trying to do with legal aid until there were lots of cutbacks in legal services. I had started to have organizational clients though, and one of them was the Community Coalition. I knew about the group being started because I went to high school with Karen Bass, and so we'd always been involved in rabble rousing, I guess we could call it, trying to create change. And I was involved in the founding of Community Coalition and ultimately had them as my client. And left legal services to start working with other nonprofit groups in the same way that I was working with Community Coalition. Did that for about 10 years. And then I went to work for a large national nonprofit called Policy Link, which focuses on racial and economic equity, and did that for several years. I was the director for Health Equity and Place, which is how your health is impacted by where you live. And that was the whole focus of our work. And I worked with governments at the federal, state, and local level, and more often with community-based organizations. I did that for another 10 years or so. Whew, I'm old. And came home to really want to focus on working in Los Angeles, specifically South Los Angeles, specifically as much as possible with African-American communities, neighborhoods, and individuals. So that's sort of my backstory. And along the way, I've done very consistent work with community-based organizations here in LA, even when I was working on the state or national level. And so I'm a board member of Community Coalition, and I also work very closely with a community-based organization in Skid Row, which has the incredibly overrepresented population of African Americans who are unhoused in our county. And so I keep wanting to make that change. But one of the things that's important, and I'm going to share today, is it really is incumbent upon all of us when we take on these kinds of projects, to as much of an extent as possible, that we sort of know where we are and who we're working with. You walk into a neighborhood, or sometimes folks will say you parachute into a neighborhood, and you're there to help and you have great intentions, but things aren't starting when you get there. Things have been going on when you get there. And so it's important to sort of step back, take a minute, take a beat, learn a little bit about the history, or share your own history, because many of you have been in these places and these spaces, and you should bring your own insights and your own observations into your work. It isn't something you should just check at the door. So I saw your hand go up. I don't know if you wanted to say something, but let me stop you for a second, because I'm gonna let you go ahead and say whatever you wanted to do, but we have some space for questions. I am rushing to get through a lot of material, and so I'm talking really fast. So I wanna honor you, but I do want to encourage everybody to sort of hold their questions till we get to those spaces in the agenda. But go ahead, please. Yeah, you said you.
Are you familiar with it's called the Right to Care law
Yes,
out of New York?
yes.
I see this gentleman, he's Black, and he's been in the community, he's homeless, and he lives on the streets for years. Is there a law that, can we get him the help, or does he have the right to refuse
Okay.
any type of help?
So you've asked me a great question, but it's really outside of what we're about to talk about today.
Okay.
And after we finish, you and I can have a little offline conversation about ways I might be able to direct you to that, okay? And so I'm not going to be able to answer specific questions about sort of those sorts of issues, but I want to spend some time giving you this sort of general background. And I will say that both Sylvia and I take this history, we feel very honored by the fact that we're part of this history, and that we have some perspective on it. It is not the only perspective though. And I want to make sure that everybody knows we're going to express some opinions, but we want to encourage you to have your own. And before I go very much further in this presentation, I'd love to just came in at the middle of some of your introductions, and I really apologize. We wanted to get here to hear your names, to hear the organizations that you're from. But can I just see a show of hands of how many folks, let's start this way, who grew up in South LA? Woo, Lordy, okay, that's great. And who lives in South LA now? All right, there she goes. And can I just shout out a couple of other neighborhoods that folks live in? Did you raise your hand for South LA? Don't go there. Don't make me start. Don't make me start the rivalry now. What street you live in? Ah, there you go. Any other neighborhoods? Long Beach, well, that's close enough. Any others? Inglewood? Now who did, you know that's South LA? What did you just say?
Inland Empire.
The Bronx? Oh, you grew up, so how long have you been in California? Oh, wow. Culture shock. Okay, we're gonna go real gentle with you. That's a very interesting community too. Okay, others? Compton, oh, you guys. Okay, any other? I mean, you got Gardena, what you got?
Should we say we're in the Inland Empire?
Inland Empire, okay, there you go. Okay, others? Carson, okay. What? Okay, well, you know, it is not East LA. We're not, there's no right or wrong answer to these questions. It's just, again, you may well have your own experiences, references, remembrances. If I don't cover them, please don't think they're not very important and relevant. It's just, I can't get to all of it. But what we want to do is just give you a little bit of background about the place we are and the place where we're serving. And very often you're going to encounter people in the work that you do, and they won't have as much understanding or awareness as you do of where they are. But that doesn't mean that it's still not relevant to how they're being treated and the environment that they grow up in. There's just, I'm circulated a longer document. We called it a landscape analysis of South Los Angeles. And even that was sort of, I don't know, limited in its scope and scale. It was the best. We wanted to try and make it short and highlight some of the issues about South Los Angeles. And one of them is the name. Is Compton in South Los Angeles? Is Inglewood in South Los Angeles? Is Gardena in South Los Angeles? There's the city of LA's definition of South Los Angeles with some city boundaries. There's the county's definition of South Los Angeles, which is so much bigger. So there's all this controversy about what this community really is. Generally, 51 square miles, 16 square miles of the city of Los Angeles is designated as South LA. People go all crazy about how many folks live in South Los Angeles. 450,000 to 800,000 is, you know, both of those freaking figures are determined and bandied about. Really began to be known as South Los Angeles about 100, 120 or so years ago. And we really see the roots of how segregation shaped the city of Los Angeles. And it was very, very definite and determined. I know, gosh, it's funny to be having this conversation in the middle of what our country is going through. All this incredible violence, it's racialized, this picking up people and throwing them in a car, taking them away, and your neighbors are just left to stand there and wonder what the hell happened. Well, believe it, that this is not the first time, and unfortunately it will not be the last, that our governments employ these kinds of tactics and focus them on people who look a certain way. And you can date back, in fact, frankly, you can date the formation of what we now know as police departments on slave catchers. And they had that in Los Angeles. And so Los Angeles has just as much segregation and isolation and racialized patterns of housing and patterns of use of all kinds of things in the society, whether it was stores or transportation, as any other Southern city had. One of the things I did in the last couple of years was I served as a consultant to the governor's task force on reparations, and the state produced a extremely comprehensive report, 1,000 pages long, on the relationship between the state of California and enforcing and continuing enslavement. And so people will say all the time, well, California didn't have nothing to do with it. No, yes, it did. And there's documented proof to that effect and establish that fact. So the definition of South Los Angeles is always a confusion. And in fact, for some of us, when we were getting started doing this work, the neighborhoods that we now refer to as South Los Angeles were referred to as South Central Los Angeles. My dad used to tell me that he used to call the area where his friends and running buddies spent time as the East Side. And that was in relationship now to what we call East LA, which is a heavily Latino area, north and east, nearer to downtown and north of downtown. And even that terminology is different, but I encourage you to think about how people use names to put neighborhoods down, to isolate them, to separate them from other communities. And that certainly has been the case first with South Central and more recently with South Los Angeles. This area of South LA was largely agricultural until about the 1900s. And I'm not going to go all the way back to the formation of the city of Los Angeles, although some of you may know that it was founded by a group of Latino and Indian explorers, if you will, with a Black member of a group of about 15 or 20 folks who started where La Placita is in downtown Los Angeles. But from that, Black people have pretty much always been in the Los Angeles area in relatively small numbers. Largest number of Blacks came in two waves, migration of Black folks fleeing segregation and violence, terrorism in the South, both times. And it was in both instances, it was around the time that the world wars were starting. So in the 1914 period of time when whites were being recruited into the army and left neighborhoods and left jobs, influx of Blacks came then, and that happened again during World War II. But one of the things I want you to keep in your head is all these connections and all these interrelationships. Those Black folks didn't just happen on Los Angeles. I mean, they were trying to get out of the South, that's true. But it's very interesting to see that there are 3 or 4 places in the country where large numbers of Black folks migrated. And you might have heard the term Black migration. One of these is Los Angeles, and that migration was in large measure because of recruitment by employers. They wanted workers and they needed workers in their factories and the automotive industry, which was just getting started in Los Angeles. And even before that, some of the other factories and manufacturing efforts. And so there was a push to bring Black people here. Well, that is interesting for us to make the parallel between what happens to immigrants from all over the world. Immigrants don't just show up somewhere. They're recruited by people who need them, want them. They recruited the Chinese to build the railroads and to pan for gold and treated them horribly as they arrived. They recruited Filipinos to come and work in medicine and social services, and they're here in large numbers. And that kind of thing, you can trace it through many, many different racial groups in this country. And it's true actually all over the world when you think about the migration patterns of people. They move somewhere because of economic opportunity almost always, even though the story that we get told is that those people are coming into our beautiful place because they have nothing in their countries. You might have heard somebody you know talk about the countries that folks leave. But if you ever spend any time looking at the countries where the folks have left, they're gorgeous. And if the resources weren't being stripped out of them, if the people in power weren't using horrible tactics and oppression, if they weren't being victimized by lawless gangs and on and on and on, the likelihood is that most people would not leave where they're from. That's an important thing to remember, is that people love their homes. It's just a very natural tendency. And so keep that in your head when you think about sort of our modern displacement tendencies of people moving out because of rents rising, or people moving out because of what we call gentrification or displacement, people moving out because a freeway was built that tore down their houses. That happened to my parents when I was a little kid. people moving out because a big stadium was being built, Inglewood. And this happens over and over and over again, and often happens in neighborhoods of color where Black people, in some examples, Latino people in other examples, people of other races, they've clustered. And one way for the powers that be, sometimes government, sometimes corporations, sometimes both, it's an easy fix to get rid of a whole bunch of people at once. You build a big stadium. You build Dodger Stadium and displace hundreds of stable families, Latino families in Chavez Ravine, where Dodger Stadium is. People say it's built on blood, and the same could be said of the SoFi Stadium. So it hasn't been easy, and it doesn't get better when you think about the traumas and the events that have occurred in South Los Angeles. So I'm skipping over a lot because, but I want to leave you with a couple of points as I kind of move us into a little bit more modern era. Most of what I'm talking about today is going to reference Black people. And that's in large measure because of the way our attitudes toward race function in this society. These neighborhoods that are now in South Los Angeles, there really weren't a lot of people there before Black people moved in. There were some whites, there were some folks in agricultural work. There were actually some Japanese and Chinese working in the early 1900s living in neighborhoods that were an acre, 2 acres, 3 acres of land where people had lots of agricultural spaces. So if you drive around between Long Beach and Gardena, you'll see, these big, almost under the power lines, they're like these big lots of nurseries and things like that. To be a lot of agricultural land in this whole big 51 square mile area. As it became more urbanized, Blacks and whites lived in those neighborhoods, but the whites began to leave. That phenomenon called white flight that has happened all over the country began to happen here. And as whites moved out, Blacks moved out of the areas that they had been really clustered in. And so one of those areas was downtown Los Angeles. I talked about folks arriving to work after the World Wars or during the World Wars when whites left their jobs. One of those big clusters was what is now Little Tokyo and downtown Los Angeles was actually a Black neighborhood. And there were tenements there, and the folks were living 2 or 3 families in a unit, and clustered around Central Avenue in downtown Los Angeles. Central and Adams, Central and Jefferson, that's about the streets that I'd be talking about. I don't know that they even had those names then. As more folks came, they stretched out a little bit along Central Avenue. And so there really was a very large contingency of Black folks living in that Central Avenue corridor area. And these were folks that were working, but began to have sort of a class hierarchy. So there were low-income Blacks living there, laborers, but there were middle and upper income Blacks living in those neighborhoods too. There were doctors and lawyers. Some of you may have heard about the hotel that went up on Central Avenue, the Dunbar Hotel, which had a very famous nightclub down the street, the Club Alabama, and there were several nightclubs on the street. This became an area in the 1920s, 1930s, where a lot of Black entertainers would stay in this hotel, which actually was built because those same entertainers had nowhere to stay, even though they came to Los Angeles to perform. So people like Duke Ellington and Count Basie and all these folks that you might have heard about back in the day, they would perform at hotels in the West Side and Beverly Hills and in Mid-Wilshire. There were a lot of big nightclubs in those areas, but they weren't allowed to stay there. So they'd come to Central Avenue and stay in the hotels, the one hotel there. And the nightlife when they were playing after hours was, according to my mom and dad, was hopping, So, you had this multi-layered, multi-economic levels of Black people living with different economic classes. And according to the stories that I've heard from friends and relatives, there was a whole society. There were, cotillions and fancy dinners and all this sort of things, just as you would expect of people who had arrived in the middle class. They were carrying on all the things that white people did in this society. There weren't many Latinos in the neighborhood. This was a very isolated Black community. And it stayed pretty much like this for about 1920 to about the 40s, when civil rights stuff really caught up nationally, and civil rights lawsuits, particularly the case of, I believe it's Shelley versus Kramer, which made it illegal to enforce restrictive covenants in housing. Now, I'm going to use this as an example of how government engaged in racist conduct that you sometimes hear about as saying it was just people's individual opinions. Yes, people can be hateful and say they don't like somebody based on something that's arbitrary, like how they look, or what their faith is, or what this color of their skin is. But the government has allowed for centuries folks to write that into the deeds on their property. And so it was very common, sometimes even required in some locations, that if you owned a piece of property, you had to put in the deed, this was just a standard clause, that the house could never be occupied by someone of a particular race, Black race, Jewish faith, sometimes Catholic, Asians. There were even clauses in some deeds that said Black people were never to occupy or own this property, except domestic servants could come during the day, but had to be gone by sundown. I don't know if you ever heard the phrase sundown town. Sundown towns were where it's in Torrance and Redondo Beach are sundown towns. They both actually use these practices. If people of color, particularly Black people, were in the city after dark, that was a citation, that was a violation. And you can see parallels of this kind of requiring identification, requiring proof that you had permission to be somewhere, which seems absolutely inconsistent with all the things that we're supposed to get out of our constitutional rights. There are all kinds of examples where that was required of people because of the color of their skin. And it's very similar to the kind of pass laws that the South African government used historically to minimize and isolate and deny rights to Blacks in South Africa, even though Blacks were heavily the majority of that country. So you can see these parallels all the way in history and how people treat each other. And I'm taking way too long on this, so I better move on. In any event, as the laws began to change very slowly and the civil rights movement was in its infancy, opportunities did open up for Blacks to move outside of that Central Avenue corridor downtown Los Angeles in some numbers. And they began to move further west. And sometimes I say to myself that the line of the Black community began to push forward. And so it used to be Central Avenue was that line you could not cross. And it was serious. My parents used to talk about this. It was serious that you could not be north and west of that Central Avenue community. And if so, people would be, hassled by the police, told to get back into their own neighborhoods. The only thing that folks were able to do really was domestic work, where they could drive the bus and become nannies or house cleaners. But after the 40s and the 50s, Blacks began to move a little bit further. So Vermont and Manchester, Vermont, and Florence became thriving Black communities. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Vermont Knolls off of it's right where the Community Coalition is located. And so those neighborhoods with very stable middle-class housing were heavily Black communities. There were shopping centers in that area. A little bit later, the line moved a little bit further west. So anyways, Black communities, Black people began to spread out. And literally, opportunity opened up for just a few years for jobs as well. And so people had more options to have jobs. Now, I told you before, there were Black lawyers, there were Black dentists, there were Black doctors, mostly living in those segregated communities, mostly serving those segregated communities. Neighborhoods began to disperse. And for some folks, that was an economic hit because they had less of a market for their services, and it was harder to get income spread all over the place. But in that migration outside of that very small area, South LA began to change. South LA began to grow, and the border moved to Western and then to Crenshaw, and then it looked like it was moving to La Cienega, but now it looked like it might be sliding back. And we're not gonna have time to talk about all of that, but in any event, things were going along with, really pockets of deep, deep poverty in the Black community in South Los Angeles and Southeast Los Angeles particularly. There was construction in the city of Los Angeles in around about the 1930s, right before the Second World War, and then seriously after the Second World War, where several large public housing complexes were built. I think some of you said you worked for HUD. Somebody worked for HUD? Or the Housing Authority. So federal government has a housing authority, which was created about 1940. It provided for a couple of things. One, redlining, which allowed the federal government to, well, actually didn't allow, the federal government took it upon itself to underwrite loans for the private industry to build housing. But in doing so, I'm sure I'm way over time, in doing so, required those lenders to only make loans in areas that were low risk. And so in order to figure out which neighborhoods were risky, the federal government paid people to go out into communities in over 200 neighborhoods throughout the country. They assessed risk in those areas. And what they did was when they came across a neighborhood that was pristine, that was predominantly white, they gave it a very high rating. It was low risk, high rating, low risk. The colors were blue or green. I think green was the highest. I sometimes get those mixed up. A risky neighborhood where there were the presence of dangerous people, suspicious people, maybe immigrants from Latvia or Italy or something like that, whatever people hated at that moment in time. Those were yellow areas, and they were marked on the map as yellow. And the loans there were discouraged, but not impossible. But the area where literally the federal government told the private sector, do not make loans here. We will not help you by underwriting or providing insurance for these loans. Those neighborhoods were marked red. And those neighborhoods had, who live in there? Black folks. And they literally, I mean, I should have brought my stuff. They literally had questionnaires where people were given jobs. And remember, this was just after the Depression. So people were like taking jobs. The government was in the business of making jobs for people to take because they wanted to put people back to work. So they had a civilian conservation corps. They built, national parks. All this stuff was done to get people working. Well, one of the jobs that people could get was going out into the neighborhood and filling out this form that said, "Ooh, is a neighborhood that's risky?" There's all these, they had checked the box, the presence of Black people, and they used horrible, horrible descriptions. They didn't say Black people, and they called us all kind of names. And they put it right on the form. And those are forms for all these neighborhoods throughout the country. Los Angeles has its own map. Los Angeles has its own history of this. And on the map, you can see the areas that are red, and they trace. I did bring those. I didn't, I have to load them up on the computer. They're all maps to show you that the redlined areas are pretty much the same areas to this day that are economically disadvantaged. They were denied investment from the federal government and from corporate sector then, and they've continually been denied investment all this time. And it's created a circumstance where there are high concentrations of low-income people and a shortage of all the kinds of services that folks need and are entitled to, including health services. What I was also going to say is that the same government department, the FHA and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, formed a way to provide housing for very low-income people, originally intended to serve those families whose the male in the family had been what's the term? Not when you are drafted. Yeah, I guess it is drafted into the military. So with those men gone, they make provisions for the women in the family. That's where most of the public housing in this country began. And so most of the initial residents of public housing throughout the country were white. And folks lived in those units for several years. When the guys came back from the war, things got a little bit better. They moved out of public housing. And then Blacks and then ultimately Latinos moved into those public housing projects. And they were rarely maintained. They were rarely meant to have existed permanently. They were built with really harsh materials like concrete floors, and they weren't really intended to survive for so long. So as they declined, that's when Black people and Latino people got in, as they were on on the decline. In those public housing projects, you could again see where they're located. They're located in these neighborhoods that were the same neighborhoods that were disinvested in. So all of this I'm trying to tell you is that the communities, I'm sorry, the neighborhoods where Blacks and Latinos used to live or were sort of isolated in, and in many instances still live now, they were designed to fail. They were designed to be disadvantaged. It's not an accident. And some of those areas where low-income housing projects were in Los Angeles particularly, were extremely destitute. And so it was in this climate that the economic conditions got really bad. To keep folks from protesting too much, to keep them in their place, police got very active and very, very violent, something that we might be seeing in our news stories today. And it was a powder keg. And along that backdrop in 1965, even though there were more Black people working, even though Black people were owning homes and moving a little bit into the middle class and moved into other areas in Watts, in Southeast Los Angeles in Watts, an incident of police brutality. Police stopped somebody who had been drinking in his car, pulled him out of the car where his brother was, began to whoop on him. Somebody went and got their mom, the mom of the two young men. She came, a crowd gathered. That is the beginning of the Watts riots. So an act of police brutality began the Watts riots, and understand the parallel between many, 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 many examples of what are considered to be race riots in this country started almost every single time by some act of over policing, aggressive policing, necessary policing, excessive policing, whatever you want to call it. And then how the narrative changes to put the blame on the folks in that moment. So Johnny, I'm going to ask to show this very short video. And in the video, it's going to show you the genesis of the Watts riots, but I want you to pay some particular attention to the tone of what you're about to see, not just what they're showing you, but how they're showing it. I don't even know what time it is. Time in the middle. Yeah. It's
6 days of rioting in the Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities. More than 100 square blocks were decimated by fire and looters, and few buildings were left intact. Firemen were harassed by snipers and quick-throwing hoodlums as they attempted to control the fires, many of which were left to burn themselves out. As the National Guard moved in to restore comparative calm, the losses by fire alone were put at $200 million. No attempt has yet been made to estimate the losses suffered at the hands of the looters who stole everything from liquor to playpen. Firemen were later issued flak suits of bulletproof mesh to protect them from snipers who continued to shoot from rooftops. Nearly 3,000 were arrested, and authorities had to open abandoned jails to house those netted by the police. It took the appearance of 14,000 troops to bring an end to what both Negro and white leaders called insurrection by hoodlums. Civil rights leaders were quick to deplore the unbridled lawlessness, and Martin Luther King vowed to do all in his power to prevent a recurrence in Los Angeles or anywhere. An uneasy calm prevails in what is known as the Watts area of the city. A curfew was put into effect, and the entire section declared off limits to all but residents. The people who live here are suffering great hardship with no grocery, drug, or other service stores able to operate. A special task force of 1,000 policemen stays on the alert as the thousands of guardsmen patrol an area of 35 square miles. The outbreak spread to other Southern California cities, but were quickly quelled. In Los Angeles, authorities say they are now ready to move with dispatch if lawlessness breaks out anew. A Riots in Los Angeles have written a sorrowful page in American history.
Whew, okay. So, thank you. So can I ask anybody, what's your first impression of that?
There you go. Very demure description. but-
Demir.
Yeah.
Get your hand up.
That's right.
Mhm. Anybody,
Predictable.
anybody else? Well, I just have to ask you first, what about the music? Yeah.
Yeah, I was 11 years old, and I lived on 100 Nathan Central, and there
Okay.
was the National Guard was set up across the street from my house there. Their whole
Yeah.
little setup, and we felt almost like what you see now.
Mhm.
And to hear that the way it's portrayed right now, like it was our fault.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's very
So that,
sobering.
it helps you understand where people get their attitudes from,
Mhm.
especially the outside of the community that you're in, when you're in it. I heard Nakia talking about 92.
Mhm.
And I know for both of us in 92, we were right up in it. I managed the legal aid office, like I told you, on the corner of Manchester and Broadway, next to a liquor store and next to a pawn shop.
Mhm.
We were in an old, my neighborhood, in my view, was a microcosm of what it means when you're trying to strip a community of all resources. So there used to be a bank, and the bank had been abandoned, and that's what the legal aid office was, in the old bank building. And so the next door to it, like I said, was the pawn shop. Next door to that was a liquor store. And all of that burned down except our bank building because it had all this lead and stuff in the walls. And so, but they had tore it up. So I saw what I was in the middle of, but then the way they talked about the riots on the news. So that piece, that was the news.
Mhm.
That was what's called a newsreel. And it used to play before movies. Before the movie would start, they'd play that. And they're in putting that into people's brains of this is what Watts is like. So it made it seem like there was violence like that for 35 square miles. How many blocks were damaged like that?
It was very isolated. It
Mhm.
wasn't as big as
Isolated.
what they're
It
trying
was
to turn.
tiny.
It
It was 6 blocks long. And they, and for folks living here, it seemed like it was massive. Described as the worst race riot in history to that
Mhm.
point, that's a lie.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can sit here all day and talk about numerous places where Black people were just
Mhm.
annihilated, including Tulsa and all the other kinds of places where whole neighborhoods were bombed. So it's just the distortion of what that narrative does, and then what follows from there. So after the 65 um, rebellion, depending on how you want to describe it, again, you would think that after hearing all those words about how this was a sorrowful chapter and everything like that, the federal government would rush in to provide resources. It is the exact opposite. You saw those falling down buildings, bombed out. That was that left there like that for 20, 30 years, untouched, sometimes the same wood. You could, we used to walk around and kick up the trash, and you'd see wrappers from candy bars that didn't exist anymore. That had been in dirt for so long. It was like you could do an excavation in these sites. All the resources were sucked out of the South Los Angeles Southwest communities. And what had been very, very heartfelt concerns of community residents who were always trying to participate and speak out, there was so many efforts to just shut people down and tamp them down. And so a period of time where, again, the kinds of resources that many of you exhibit. You work for agencies that provide healthcare services, mental health care services, social services. You're located in your communities. None of that. People were literally isolated and left alone. And the disinvestment on the public side was only matched by the disinvestment on the private side. So that, I talked about white flight before, when people moved out of their neighborhoods because they are afraid of Black people moving in. And I should say real quickly, that was actually a tactic that the real estate industry taught to real estate agents, scare folks in a neighborhood so that they'll promote sales. This is exactly what happened to my parents. When I told you my parents lost their house to eminent domain when it was, because the freeway was built on the Crenshaw Freeway. My father used to say we lived on the Crenshaw off ramp to the freeway. That's where our house was. So when they moved on the street that was predominantly white. The realtor told them, stay inside. Don't let your kids play on, on the street. They didn't listen. And I was a little kid. I was like 1 or 2. By the time I started kindergarten, the whole street was black. They say what happens is that realtors will go and tell the neighbors, oh, they're moving in. They're going to lower your property values. Better get out now while the getting's good. And somebody who was not selling their house was suddenly selling their house. And so they've caused a lot of sales that way. So those neighborhoods and all those tactics kept going. The white flight that had happened in the residential neighborhoods, or was beginning to happen even more, the commercial sector mirrored that. So that bank that my organization used to operate, that bank decided we don't want to be in this neighborhood anymore. So 10 years before legal aid moved in, the bank had pulled up all its resources. Same happened with, in fact, on my block where my office was located, there used to be a bowling alley. The bowling alley was vacant and had been occupied by Victory Outreach, a drug and alcohol rehab program. The supermarket down the street closed down and became occupied by a church. And there were several other stores that were just vacant. So you could see, again, you could kind of do this historical review of this used to be a thriving neighborhood with services, and now all of the services are gone. The stores and all the commerce moved to the west side, to the valley, to other places to get away from this dangerous environment. And so what you ended up with were another Watts rebellions were in 65, another 15 or 20 years of this sort of despair, trying to make it through, abandonment, frankly, from the government and from private business. And as private business left, so did large industry. So this really was that period of time where in South Los Angeles, one of the most vibrant industries was the automotive industry. And so if you know this community, you know that there was a General Motors plant, there was a Uniroyal plant, a Goodyear plant, so construction of automobiles and all the things that go along with them. And they were mostly all located in Firestone, what's that other community? Not even quite that far east, but that area too. So that whole little corridor down there. What's that city that's not a city? Vernon. Thank you very much. And so all these businesses were there, and they all had, because the civil rights movement was going on at the same time. You always have to remember this stuff is happening simultaneously. Civil rights movement had made some progress. The Voting Rights Act had passed, Equal Opportunity Act had passed. Black folks were starting to get jobs, mostly laborer jobs, but they got them and they were union jobs and they paid good benefits. And so suddenly folks began to have a little middle class, opportunity. And that union job part really pissed off the automotive industry. And they began looking for other places to locate their industries that hired thousands of people. And they looked to the South, which had much weaker union laws. And they looked out of the country to where they could get in China and other places where they could get the parts assembled. And they began to close down their businesses. But they claimed that they were leaving out of fear of another riot. They all used the excuse that they had to get away from the riot. Now, understand this. This was in 1989, 1988, 1990. The riots had been in 1965. So they had held it on. No particular damage, nothing. We talked about how isolated the riots really were. They talked about, this was 2, 3, 4, 5 miles from where they were located, but they were scared. And this fear made them close down their businesses. And the cars changed too. The cars changed in terms of what they needed and whether they needed these big factories to build them. And so as those businesses closed, they threw thousands of people out of work. And as those thousands of people became out of work, they lost their homes. They started not being able to pay their bills. that's around the time that I had started working as a legal aid attorney, and we had never been so busy. We had one office and not one, the only thing we did, the only kind of case we heard, actually, there were two kinds. One was foreclosure defense. People were losing their houses in foreclosure. And that kept us busy. You really have to understand this because legal aid is a volume business. That literally kept us busy all day, 5 days a week. And then the other type of case that we had that we couldn't say no to, police abuse. Police abuse, because the police were still being as violent and as oppressive as they had been right before the 65 unrest. So we were sitting there. Oh, and I'm sorry, one other phenomenon that was a reaction to the loss of thousands and thousands of jobs, actually two things. One was it wasn't just the jobs themselves when the factories closed, it was all the other businesses related to the factories that closed down too. So, you used to have a customer who worked at GM and they needed to have their uniform pressed, they'd go to the cleaners. They used to want to go and get a sandwich to take for their lunch and they'd stop at the sandwich shop. All these businesses closed down when the factories closed down. So that's why you would drive up and down these streets in South Los Angeles and you'd see all these storefronts empty. The community was economically depressed, but it was also depressed. And from a mental health background, you can understand this is a community-wide depression. There was sorrow, there was a heaviness. I used to see clients and I think, oh my gosh, this client is so much older than me. I'm helping her with her getting her unemployment insurance, or I'm helping her get her Social Security disability. And I'd look at her file and she was 25 years old, 30 years old, much younger than me. And I think this is just like a physical weight on people's shoulders. And so it was around this period of time that the other big hit came to South Los Angeles, and that was a drug epidemic. That first PCP and then crack were introduced in the community in massive ways. Now, again, we don't have time to talk about the history of that, but there's a lot of stuff written about where crack came from and why so much of it was in the environment and who made money off of it and who kept it going for so long, but it literally devastated the community. So I thought there were a lot of foreclosures before. It was massive. And so then what you saw was a community that was shifting over from predominantly Black, because all the Black people were being displaced. Renters are being displaced, homeowners are being displaced. But the markets need to make money and they need customers to make money. As I told you before with white flight, realtors will create a need for their property if you're not automatically moving. So they had people moving out, they needed new people to move in. And it was just at that time, because we always have to remember stuff was going on simultaneously. It was at that one thing I should say before I go on. When I talk about simultaneous stuff happening, and you saw the video footage of the Watts riots, remember that was the start of 2 or 3 summers, which were called long, hot summers, where there was violent reaction to oppression, mostly police brutality in cities all over this country. In New York, in DC, in Detroit, oh my God, violent reactions to civil protests about job exclusion, protests about school desegregation, you name it. They were burning neighborhoods down, and they always made it seem like we were burning them down. But the point is, Los Angeles was one of a part of that chain back in the 60s. So, back to where I was saying, at the same moment that all these houses became vacant in South Los Angeles that had been occupied by Black people who had really just had 5 minutes of being middle class, there was international upheaval, international intervention by the US into countries like El Salvador and Guatemala. And there's terrible repression in those places. And so you've had lots and lots of refugees flooding Los Angeles to get away from violence in their homeland. And as they came into Los Angeles, they're Latino, but they weren't particularly well treated or welcomed by the mainstream Mexican Chicano service organizations that were more located in East Los Angeles. They sort of said, yeah, we don't know you, you're not from here, and you don't look like us. And, it's like a little incongruous, but that was frankly the behavior that they were met with. So a lot of those Guatemalan and Salvadorian refugees were located in South Los Angeles. They were sort of encouraged and shifted by social service workers. So we can find you a place to live. We can find you a social service group to connect to in South Los Angeles. And so those same houses that had become empty because we had Black owners that had been displaced started being occupied by Latinos, not Mexican for the most part, Salvadorian and Guatemalan. And that created another level of shock in South Los Angeles. People didn't quite know what to do. Those immigrants didn't necessarily feel comfortable around Black people. Black people didn't quite know what to do with the Latinos that they were coming into contact with. But for the most part, the social service agencies began to help and settled a whole lot of Latinos. Now, because we have a wonderful housing industry that always does the right thing by everyone, realtors did not miss a beat. They exploited the hell out of the Latinos coming in. And they started selling houses to multiple families at one time, telling them they could all live in a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. And they did. They moved into those houses. They were signing loan documents. I had one of my early cases where we tried to get the loan documents translated into Spanish because people didn't even know what they were signing. And the houses that they were moving into had been allowed to deteriorate because it was so difficult that for the Black folks living there to get any loans to maintain them. So, it's hard to maintain a house, particularly it's going to need something very large. It's absolutely a given. You're going to need a new roof. You're going to need a new heater. You're going to need something that costs several $1,000s. And redlining and its legacy had made it very difficult for Black people to get loans to just make those needed repairs. And when they did get loans, they got them from just really, there was actually a gang of crooks that would blanket South Los Angeles with these horrible terms on home repair loans and take all these liens on their property and usually force them into foreclosure. So that was another way that Black people were experiencing foreclosure. So anyways, the point I'm trying to make is Latinos came in large numbers, but they were exploited coming in the door. And so we had this situation, these circumstances where South Los Angeles was starting to have much larger percentage of Latinos. The social services and public services had still been denied. There was economic disinvestment. There was tremendous police brutality. There was crack cocaine. There was PCP. Sounds pretty negative. And then one night, I'm going to turn it over to Sylvia to tell you the happy story. When a brother was driving down the street in Simi Valley, somebody named Rodney King. It's Sylvia's turn.
Okay, 5 more minutes. So I think we should kind of fast forward. This is the power, though, of videos and cell phones, and we're seeing that today. We've seen the execution of 2 people in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that is the power, right? So as Mary was describing, the conditions had deteriorated. When I talk about the mayor and I, we were dealing with so many of the victims of the crack epidemic. Me, the children, the babies, and the mayor dealing with gunshot wounds and, violence related to the crack epidemic. This was going to be the generation, as the powers that be said, the throwaway generation. And that's when we see a lot of parents ending up in prison, dying, and the violence eliminating parents. Grandparents take those children, and they are seniors on one fixed income. When we think about the civil unrest, when we look at 1965, nothing rebuilt. On Vermont Avenue, could drive down, there was nothing there but empty buildings. I remember the place because my grandmother lived in Watts. We would go down to Vermont Avenue to buy pretty dresses. Mm-hmm. So, and I also remember the Watts riots because I remember laying down on the roof of her house and watching what the press was calling Charcoal Alley #1 and Charcoal Alley #2. When the civil unrest happened, it really was a rebellion. And we call it the Rainbow Rebellion because folks as far as Hollywood were burning stuff and stealing stuff. And one of the views of this was that it was once again, look at Black people, look at how they destroy their properties. What was behind the scenes was when all of the businesses had left, people were having to use the liquor store and there were 725 liquor stores in South LA. South LA had at that point, I think, what was it, 200,000 folks? And that's a highly concentrated place where that became the storefront for slinging crack cocaine, as well as elderberries, strawberries, the folk that were trying to make it through, right? The crack dealer was using the, remember payphones? Some of you, there were payphones. So it was a one-stop shop. You had the phone, you had the boxes out there, you had the liquor store guy who's willing to give you malt liquor, and what there used to be was crack cocaine kits where you could just smoke it, right? And screen and the little tube and the whole thing, right?
Paraphernalia.
The paraphernalia. So when the rupture happens and people talk about, the burning, the fire, once again, it was just like 65, the police, moved in. We had Daryl Gates, who had been in a place called, he kept on dealing with the crack cocaine epidemic by using Operation Hammer. He also made sure that the South LA was saturated with police that would intimidate, abuse, and kill. So at that point that we're looking at the unrest, we look at the rupture, and one of the quick experiences going to visit Mary at Legal Aid, sitting at one of those walls that were now thin, and I could hear the crack dealing going on. And Mary and I would just, have to deal with the fact that wherever there was crack, there would be violence. So the civil unrest had a lot of different issues bubbling up. But what's important and how this intersects with where you are in terms of the work that you do was that the social services were needed. And after the unrest, what we found was Little Community Coalition, who had been about community organizing, did what you're doing. We decided we weren't going to roll in and say, here, we're your saviors. We were going to get to know the folks. We did an interview, and we did it with 1,000+ folks. People gave us the feedback, as you're going to be getting feedback from parents saying these are the things we need. And we thought they were going to tell us we had to go deal with a crack house. And thank goodness people said, liquor stores, we want them out. And although they felt, and they were right, that the liquor store had now become the place, not only the vice center, but that's where you would go to bank your checks. There were no banks. This is where you not only the drug dealer and the folks that were having to cash your checks, they would intersect. So you can imagine what was happening there. Those of you who lived there, there was liquor stores. One was called on Western Bucket of Blood, because that became the place where there would be body dumping from the gang wars that were going on. So when Community Coalition started to organize, our view was we were going to eliminate, we were going to deal with the racism, and we were going to look at ways that we could turn the economic situation around and save the young people, the older folks, community, Black, brown folks. And so what we ended up doing was the organizing to reduce the number of liquor stores, freeing up the space so that we could have pocket parks, and we'd be able to bring in a credit union. This kind of development happened as a result of organizing. At the same time, organizations like Scope in South LA came to be. They were focused on if there were vacant lots, what should be the economic development? And instead of saying, we think this, they also went door to door. They began to organize and bring in the residents like Community Coalition. Those most affected by the conditions now had a role of power. Our role was really looking at how do we engage people to have positive, transformative power, because we would age out, but people had to have a mechanism and their own sense of power. This is where you come in. In this time that we're in, we are going to see the increase of violence against our people. That is having untold consequences on babies and children as their parents are being ripped away, and the little babies and children who are seeing it happen, where folks now are getting normalized that somebody can roll in with a mask and take you out. And it doesn't matter what your citizenship is. And by the way, South LA is not monolithically Latino or Black. A lot of the immigrants from the Dominican Republic, from Belize, from Panama, they are Afro-Latino, and they came to live in South LA in order to have cover. So we are looking at, and by the way, and I know we got to get going, but in 1791, I got to digress. The first Black Mexican was made the mayor. Of the 47 folks from Mexico that came up to found Los Angeles, 27 were Afro-Mexican. So we have a long legacy here. So as I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to just say that out of the murder of Latasha Harlan, out of the civil unrest and all of the, there were, let's put it this way, there were 1,500 folks that were arrested during that civil unrest. Of them, I think there was, I don't know, correct me, but there was 57 that were killed, and of that, a third were Latinos. The occupation with the National Guard and the LAPD was to get folks to put the jackboot on our necks again. And the good news, you all were involved. Your organizations got built out of that time to heal our people, and the organizations like Coalition to transform power. I'm going to turn this back to you because we're looking at negative narratives and neglect, and we have to
We can do any of that. Yeah, I think
Okay.
we have more to cover than we have time to do.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have a schedule and you need to have lunch. So I never want to be in between a group that is. hungry.
No, that gets ugly real
So,
quick.
you know what, I just want to give you a little sense of what we wanted to, our plan was to go through all of this to get to the place where we talk with you a little bit about, the mental health, social supports for this community, for South Los Angeles. And, you can make it even broader and go to Southwest Los Angeles if you want to, and just county and city, both. Because as much as we've talked about how horrific, how painful, how destabilizing all of this history was, there is such strength in the neighbors and the residents and the people who live here. There is, I almost hesitate to use the word, there's a resilience, there's a spark, there is always joy, there is always family and connection. People take care of each other, people reach out to each other, that they learn to get along, they learn to understand and respect and be with their neighbors, they pick up each other's traditions. This is just the history of South Los Angeles. You see that in the residents, you see that if you teach school or if you're in a school and you see how the kids get along with each other and they start off with such just a commonality without regard to all the other things that people will put on them. You're here in so many ways to be able to tap into that and underscore that. I am absolutely not a health practitioner of any stripe, but I've seen what happens when there are those constructive and positive interventions. Part of what we were going to cover was going to be the fact that there have been, thankfully, so many resources made available throughout South Los Angeles, and wanting to make sure that you guys are making connections. But I come here and I see you're already making those connections, and that your groups are pushing forward. We want to be here in a way to support TPF, but it's ultimately how all of you operate with each other that's going to be that support that's needed. When we talk about the history, it's in hopes that you can make some connections with the folks that you work with their families, with their other, their churches, their social service groups. And not just to hear what we said, but again, to bring into the picture what what you've experienced. And if you've experienced it in another part in New York, it's transferable because it's that same sense of who you are, your rights to be right where you are, to be your best self, and frankly, the obligation of our government and of our social service system to provide that support, to be that, that safety net if you need it. So I'm not going to go on any further. I think it's probably best for me to stop here, say that we are available if you needed us to come back. If you got the landscape analysis, you have some more of the background information. I do, if it's okay with you, want to open it up in case there are any questions or comments for just a couple of minutes before we turn the agenda back to you.
We never have a problem doing it. We might have tried a problem with that. We have a problem doing. And second of all, coming together in forums like this one, never have a problem. This is the problem. It's connection. It's the interdependency. It's the ability, like someone would say, I can't afford the service. Well, if there's 30 of us, you can afford my service. It's like having your service. And the other thing is corporate dependency, not only because if we corporately, which is cooperation.
Yeah.
Or we learn how to cooperate with each other, have that close experience. But like Dr. Wilson said, is have the different aspects of the community in place, depending where there's interdependence. Then we can thrive.
That's right. We can thrive. That's absolutely right. Anybody else have a comment, please?
I just wanted to say that you took me back to 1992 when I was a freshman at Loyola Marymount University, working with Dr. Cheryl Groves. She introduced
Part of our little club.
She introduced me to the Community Coalition, worked on projects with her to be able to assist the community from the data collection statistical perspective. I got to meet Mayor Bass. I was so inspired then. I am so inspired now, and I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for the work that you have done and the contribution that you've made to this community and to all of us. And I'm just really honored to be in your presence and to hear the history through your lens. And for me, you're just a jewel.
Oh,
yeah.
that's
Thanks so much.
such a beautiful thing to say. Thank you so much. But I know we both feel good about being able to be with you because it is going to take all of us and the kinds of relationships and networks that you build in order to make a dent in this problem. But I'm going to tell you something, we're going to win.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no doubt about it.
Too many of
Yeah.
us. Mm-mm-mm.
All right. So it is.
And
So
to
thank you
be
very
it.
much for the time. Appreciate you.
We are so sorry, because there's never enough time to
Never
talk
enough
about
time.
the truth.
Yeah.
And I think we tried to give you 90 minutes, but we needed 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, a whole curriculum on the line. And then also the actual story of it all. And thank you for being witnesses in that time. And thank you for being witness in our time.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't wait till we work more with your partners that you've had. And
Mhm.
now you see where we're going.
I do.
yeah.
and
I
we're
hope
happy
you
about
stay
it.
for lunch.
Oh, I can't, but I love being here. It was
Okay,
just
wait,
real-
well, that means we have to take our photo before they leave, our
okay,
group photo
okay.
before they leave, and then
Okay,
we can leave
group
for lunch.
Okay.
Or you can take a plate. So, who's our coordinator of the photo? How are we gonna do this? Where are we gonna do this photo? Kevin, where do you think?
Let's gather around you.
Okay, put something on the screen that says something.
That says something.
Yeah.
That's a light.
Very. Oh my gosh, baby. I'm ready.
I will put a logo somewhere.
We did projects like, City of Westchester.
Who is our photographer?
I work for 80.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Erica to be. I would love her to be, but she could be in it, then she could do a selfie.
I went to the entertainment office, an entertainer named Trees Rush. It's like, this is what I have done. I have been doing.
Going good?
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I do like
Yeah, I'm gonna hear me, friend.
Yeah.
Way back.
I'm Johnny. All right,
Make
let's
the
do,
tall people sit down.
let's do three rows, photos in the back. In the middle, I feel like you're all taking photos before you know which row you belong in.
Okay, you were right behind me. No, I see you, you were like, you're like my cat, you know what I mean? Like, oh.
Alright, we have everyone in the back, like two rows, go down there, like 2, 3 seconds. 1, 2.
You know, we go home after we get through the year and we don't see all those coalitions that form together, this picture's gonna be in there.
That's nice.
Yes, we are.
No pressure, we have a makeup artist.
Black history.
This way. Oh, yeah.
Alright, we're going right, I'm gonna Photoshop myself into that space right there. Okay. Alright,
Wait, Johnny, what happened?
I'm gonna Photoshop what?
He's gonna Photoshop himself.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I was like, why you think I'm looking at the good of all the people here. It's my EA. It does. I never, look at that.
So is it Mexican?
Yeah, I don't know where they
I'm gonna Photoshop myself a little taller.
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah. I got BS martini. Ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. We'll take a couple.
You should probably get on a chair
Go
and
to-
take one from us.
Oh, yeah, what? Oh, you're really good. Okay, we got.
So folks,
Trying to put us in a museum, guys.
We have to do a video. We all have to say, what are we gonna say?
Change agents.
Okay.
How about play now, thrive later? Okay. This is a photo.
Nice little photo.
Okay, now the video.
Maybe it should be joy. No, that doesn't.
This will be play now, thrive later.
Okay,
I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, and it's play now, thrive later, okay?
Or you hold that.
2, 3.
Thank you, great job. Yeah, the follow-up if you need.
Yeah, I know, I'm feeling like I should be back for you guys right now. Yeah. Yeah, great, perfect. It looked like the beginning of a community coalition. Transformative. You know, I just hope at some point I get to just take coffee with you to sit down just to 101.
I think that's just right. Like I.
Well, you're gonna need some of this. I'm real good at that. I know that. Yeah.
Oh, but they're. Without really their. So I would love that.
All right, I'm gonna send you an invite. Well, I'll- Thank you. It made me feel so cool.
Good, thank you. Have a good day.
We'll stop recording for lunch. Or just pause.
First was a chair. Do we need any new chairs? We're gonna sit back.
There's another chair in there. Grab the other chair.
Johnny, could you put module C up?
Table is over. This table.
They're trying to put the framing. Oh, it follows you?
Oh, is this the new map?
Yeah.
This is an old Mac. It's my Mac I kind of refuse not to not use. It's so overloaded with so many things. It barely works anymore. And I even got a brand new laptop, but I refuse to leave it because this is the Mac that has still the USB port. All the new ones don't have it.
Yeah.
So I like refuse to stop.
Maybe we should get like an extra hard drive.
I did. That's still like psychologically of like I like this computer. What was our plan? I'm the first slice, and then when do I bring He's the next one. Paulette's not next, or Phil. I don't remember what Philip is. You have to just tell me the next is. And are you doing the clicking to go through the slides? Okay, just tell me, because I don't know what's the next one, and I didn't print out, and I can't see it on my computer. So I don't know what's next. I'm gonna just be talking. So the changing of it is gonna make me change. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so everything before that is me. So just you. Okay, just keep changing the slides so I can stop talking. You know how I. It was just agreement that they would have to take they would have to take this training academy and attest to it. That anybody who came here was a provider and had AMPI, so that's why he didn't come, because he just wanted to come. I know what he was doing. He don't realize who he was working with. You didn't have to do that.
Every consultant's existence. I know exactly what he was doing.
That's not right. You don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. That's what
It's either you want to partner and be a coalition or you don't. And that's where we are right now. All right, we'll be starting in 1 minute. We'll be starting in 1 minute.
You don't need it then? We will, okay.
I'm gonna change that following me thing that it's doing.
I love it.
30 seconds.
Is anyone using this chair?
It's okay if you missed the countdown. I'm gonna start talking. You're gonna be where you are, but you're gonna be quiet though.
This one's more comfier.
Yeah, but I owe you a good butt comfy chair. You took care of me so well the other day.
Okay, we are now getting started. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed lunch.
Thank you.
Great work collaborating with each other. Great work listening to the landscaping that our consultants came through with. Weren't we honored to be able to have such history
Yes,
and knowledge in the room from Mary and Sylvia?
yes.
We're so grateful to them. They were a part of a grant we won from DMH. And for them to come here and listen to what the work we've been doing and help prepare you guys for the community we're serving. Because even if you might be in IE or might not be in South LA, or you might not call yourself you in Inglewood or Compton and you don't count it. Just know that we still have a shared history. And I think it's the foundation of what we're about to get into, the meat and potatoes, is what I call this. So this module C is a part of the training academy. So I created the Collective Care and Action Training Academy because I'm a consultant with the state of California. And the state of California asked me to create a CalAIM toolkit to help other CBO organizations to be able to contract with MCPs the way that we have. I think we are one of the only small CBO BIPOC owned, Black woman owned. I don't even know any other ones who are a consultant with the state for this, and I take it very seriously. So this module is usually a live webinar that I present to my employees about how our ECM program is run. One thing about CalAIM and ECM is it's customized by each organization that has the contract. So you might go to Pacific Clinics or, name one that you know. All these organizations, hospitals, 211 has an ECM contract. Their ECM contract will now be the same as our ECM program.
That's good.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, because you know what they didn't do? They didn't standardize nothing. They gave everybody a contract and said, go forth and make us money. And they didn't tell us how to do that. They gave us a contract. If you are one of the leaders of your org, you saw how I did it. I'm modeling for you how they treat me. I'm just trying to show you. So what they do is they give you a contract, sign it. You don't need to know how much you get paid. Just sign this. Well, how would I know? Go look in the marketplace somewhere. There's a California thing. So I did all the research for you and went and found all that stuff and gave you a rate agreement with the truth. Now, this is me attempting to be an advocate for Black-led organizations that are getting coaching from me underneath the marketplace. I got paid from the marketplace to create this and to do this with New Leaf on Life and Dream Live Hope. So thank them. And Joy Youth Services. Thank them for allowing this to happen today, because if we were not funded, I wouldn't have had the time, the energy, and the resources to get you lunch and to do all this for you. So I just wanted to lay that foundation for you about where this module C came in. So this is a module that I co-opted from being from my employees. So you are going to learn how TPF and only TPF. Now you might go somewhere and they'd be like, that's not ECM. They doing it, they ECM. Which I think other people's ECM is kind of like making phone calls once a month and saying how you doing and then doing a note. Whereas ours, it has wellness labs, community play dates, intentional clinical oversight by a nurse practitioner and a therapist. So that's the model you're going to learn today. And I will pause for Q&A and all that stuff at the end, but I'm really just going to breeze through it. I will have partner presenters with me. Devin is here. He's going to show up in the relationship building. He's one of our consultants who has been helping me do the consulting with the state to build out the collective care and action, to do the coaching for the organizations, to help us learn how to serve you, to have your own contracts in the future. We will never kick you off of our subcontractor unless you're not doing your work. You could stay subcontracted with us and still get your own contracts and remove yourself from lines of service. So do know that everything you're learning today, I'm expecting you to understand and know and disseminate to your employees and your staff and your team, because this is the foundation of the work they're going to do. This is the direct service provider lens that we're about to go into. Direct service provider lens with a mental health perspective and knowing how to bill for it. So listen, don't retain it all. If you don't understand, if I'm talking too fast, it's okay. I talk fast. I'm recording it. I'm trying. And we will also put all these modules on our Tavuti platform, which is our live and self-paced webinar platform, so you guys can access this. We're also gonna send you this presentation so that you can have it and reference it in the future, so you don't have to remember it all. You don't have to take a bunch of notes. Just listen and receive and learn. I'd also recommend, because I'm a teacher and all that stuff, that you maybe write down the things that really resonate with you, because you retain more information when you write it down. Not just listen to it and heard it, or even saw it on your computer. That's not how you learn. I don't know if y'all know that. I don't know if you know your learning style. I definitely learn from looking at something and writing it down. And I recommend you think about your learning style as you move through this presentation, okay? Also, one other thing I wanted to put out there is you have your Training Academy guide. You do not have to follow this. You just have to follow what I say or what all me and my partner presenters. After Devin, you might see Ivana. She's going to help you with access. You might see Paulette and Philip, who will help us with talk about clinical and some of the other things about organizational structure with TPF. We're going to tag team it. We're a team. When my mouth start hurting, I'm be like, somebody else come talk. And that might happen. One of y'all might get up. Oh, no, mom. Hold up. Didn't you do co-2 with me? Somebody else go take over. But you have this, you'll notice that it's printed out and it's not given to you digitally. That's because this is mine. This is my Training Academy, my phases, what I've created. It is sometimes a problem when you give your whole thing to somebody else, suddenly your logo is gone, especially if you gave it to them digitally. Not that you can't just scan this and use it, but you don't sign in a addendum in a contract and let me see you do that. I'll see you another time.
That's how we first met professionally. There was something like, this is my beautiful, and it is gorgeous workload. And if I see it anywhere else, I will sue you.
I will. That's why you sign agreements and things, not because I don't trust you, but this is the way of business. You are now in business. This ain't friendship only. If we would just be at a brunch right now. We wouldn't be talking with a presentation and things like that. We'd just be hanging out and you could be picking my brain like you want to, but you won't be engaging with my clients in a trusty way because, so this is your Bible of your training. And you don't have to know it. Like I said, go over it with your team. We go into 5 phases of a Training Academy. Phase 1 was all the contracts, the letters of information, the signatures, did you do this? Do you have the MPI? That was phase 1. You have engaged in it. Congratulations. And that was also the first presentation. That will also be on Tavuti, on the thing for you to access at self-paced. If something passed over you, you didn't get it, you was excited about something else, you're distracted today, it's okay. You got access to that presentation and you could always go back and look at it again. And this final one is also phase 3. So it goes into, phase 2. It goes into 5 phases. So you will have completed phase 2 at the end of today. You will get a certificate if you sign in and sign out. And all of our certificates will count for you. So if you ever wanted to go get a job for somebody's CalAIM program as a CHW, you can turn in all your certificates from us and it will count as your hours towards your CHW training so that you can actually be considered a CHW for another organization as well, which is why I'm intentionally making it structured to give you certificates so you can use it even beyond our collaboration. Okay. So now you got your Training Academy guide. You have your landscape. Those are all your tools. And then you'll get this. Okay. So now I'm going to go in it. Now, when I say I'm going to go in it, I'm going to just start talking. Y'all might have questions and you might be really confused. You could raise your hand if it's a minor thing about something what does that acronym mean? What is that? When you talk about pause me, I can go back. But if you have a specific question about what do I do when I get a client like this, or my organization has this, and this, we can't answer that in the immediate. That can be more towards the end. And also as we continue to consult. Good?
We also have the dry erase boards over here with Post-it notes at the bottom. And so there is the opportunity to write down a question and stick it on the board. And if we don't get to it today, we can send out a mass email with the answer to frequently asked questions.
Okay. Thank you. So I've been using the word CalAIM a lot. That's because most of you are contracted, as far as I know, as CalAIM providers for TPF. We also have a line of service called Healthcare Access. Healthcare Access is our line of service that is for behavioral health and medical health. So it's for the clients who are suffering maybe from being unhoused and poverty, but they have a mental illness that is stopping them from getting placement. They have a physical illness that is stopping them from getting placement, a shelter, whatever it is in their life, something about their mental or physical health is impacting them. They can be referred also to healthcare access. TPF has therapists, TPF has a nurse practitioner, TPF has the ability to do psychotropic medication management. We have the ability to send for lab work if somebody needs a blood test or things like that. We have in the past been able to do full-blown comprehensive assessments for children who needed a regional center referral because we have a doctor and we have a therapist on site, and we can give that letter if that kid needs to be in regional center. So we are a targeted outreach approach to addressing healthcare access across the board, and healthcare access is your referral into that. But it's not the same as CalAIM. We are not therapists and we are not doctors at CalAIM. If you are in the CalAIM program, it's generally if you are somebody who is overutilizing healthcare systems from your insurance company or underutilizing healthcare systems from your insurance company, okay? Gonna get this slide, I'm not gonna read it. That's a summary. Next slide. The key differences between CalAIM and healthcare access. CalAIM is here to outreach and build relationships. Providers create relationships that lead to individualized care plans for each client. Why do you think we would need individualized care plans for outreach clients? This is not therapy, right? This is not medical. Why do you guys think we need that? You can just throw it out.
But each client's different, has
Mhm.
different needs.
Measure outcomes, the success of.
Definitely measurement to know whether they're regressing or progressing, right? What else? Advocacy. What is a care plan though? Like, what is it physically? Words written down. Documentation. What does documentation do? I think you guys know I have a thing. What's my job here?
Client and the organization understand what the plan and the goals are.
Yes, so it's that understanding, that written narrative of I'm the client, this is what I'm gonna do. You the provider, this is what you're gonna do, and this is the timeline we're gonna do it in. When you don't have this with people who are in need, they don't even remember who they talked to. I think I saw you one time, girl. We spent 6 months applying for Medi-Cal together. I got you in that house you was in for 2 years. You don't remember me? They don't. They don't. Because all they wanted was help.
Yeah.
They didn't care who it was. You was patting yourself on the back. Look what I did for her. She didn't even know. But if you documented it and you had a care plan and it was signed by them on this date, guess what? They can't say you wasn't there. I actually have people came in for sessions with me, called the insurance company, said, why did they charge this copayment? It was their copayment. They signed it and everything. I had to prove that they signed in that day. There's a picture of them walking in. No, it's serious. I mean, and I don't think they're doing it because they are trying to take from us. This is not it. This is the client we serve with CalAIM. They have been assigned to us by the insurance company because the insurance company can't find them. Insurance company ain't making enough money. Go find them, make the bill. That's what they think they're doing. We are doing something else, right? And that's the difference, intention with all of the programs. Now, healthcare access, I already told you. It's a further extension of our advocacy and our documentation. From the CalAIM program, you have to refer to external sources. It doesn't have to be TPF that you refer to for therapy or the doctor. It could be the hospital you know. It could be that doctor around the corner. It could be St. John's that you have a really good relationship with that nurse or that nutritionist or this person at this person. It don't have to be us. And in fact, it won't be us because we're very small. We're for the targeted client who really needs it in the immediate. We are hoping that CalAIM program and building enough relationships that we have enough people to refer to so that we don't have to be everything and anything. That's what TPF is hoping. Because there is not enough Black providers who specialize in perinatal mental health and early childhood like I do. I'm trying to train interns. I'm trying to bring them up, but there's no way for us as a small organization to meet all these needs. So therefore, CalAIM and Healthcare Access work together collaboratively to find more resources for not only us to refer to, but for people to feel like they can get their needs met in the immediate and remember who they're working with. You know, if they remember who their care plan person is, their case manager and their outreach, what we call it a support squad. So on CalAIM, our support squads are made of community health workers, LCMs, and clinical consultants. The clinical consultants are generally therapists, doctors, occupational therapists. We have one financial health nurse who helps all my clients who got financial issues, always unhoused and got poverty. You got to go meet with this lady once a quarter to talk about if you got life insurance or if you ready to try to invest in something with your life or some financial literacy, because that's what's blocking them in their health care. So the clinical consultant is a specialist. Somebody who could bill as a clinical consultant is somebody who is a master's level therapist, a master's level intern underneath somebody's supervision. It could be somebody who has a medical MPI, like a dietitian, a nutritionist, MP, and so many different ways, physician's assistant. All those people can count as a clinical consultant. And the clinical consultant is the one that oversees comp assessments and care plans. The lead care manager is the primary lead of the support squad. They're the one who is supposed to know if your client is on fire. If your client is on fire, meaning that their assessments and measurements are saying that they are suicidal, they want to harm somebody else, you have to tell a clinical consultant so they can go in and check on them and do crisis intervention. And the community health workers reports sort of in a way to the LCM. And the LCM is the one that tells the community health worker, I done called my client 3 times today. They are suicidal on their assessments. I can't find them. They're not responding to emails. Can you go to their house? And that's the difference between Healthcare Access and CalAIM. A therapist ain't gonna show up at nobody's house. What? You better show up to us. It's boundary setting. You better show up to your appointment, say your co-payment, and then we end in 45 minutes and I'm gonna do your note and I and your friend and the family to talk to you whenever you want. But at LCM, you should be accessible to your client in that way. I often hire clinical interns as LCMs because I found that you need a clinical skill set sometimes to de-escalate somebody who's in an extreme crisis. So I would really recommend that LCMs do be people who have experience dealing with people in trauma and de-escalating and regulating them. But that doesn't have to be a therapist, which is why it's not a requirement. Okay. And then the community health worker, like I said, is the most important, the trusted person, the face, the one that they don't remember that they know you, but they know they got something and they was happy about it. So now there's a nurturing, energetic feeling of I like you, I trust you, and I'll believe you when you say I need a doctor or a mental health professional. All right. Next, these are the insurances we accept. So you know our support squads, right? I think, did we jump ahead? Let's go back one more slide about the programs. Okay, no, it's afterwards. Keep going. So these are the insurance we accept for all of our programs. We have the CHW standalone program. So what's interesting about the community health worker can work in 2 service lines. So we have 2 programs, CalAIM and Healthcare Access. I'm not going to mention STRTP or ArtGuard because it does not apply currently in this conversation. You're going to learn more about it later. But TPF overall has 4 operating programs. The 2 primary ones that are billable in this current model that we're discussing is CalAIM, which has CHW standalone, ECM, and community supports. For CHW standalone, this is different from the outreach we do for ECM. For the standalone, this is for people who you just meet on the corner or like you at the store and they tell you their whole life story and they, you know what I'm talking about? You don't know nothing about it, you ain't got their insurance. But they tell you everything, and then they're like, they trust you now because you made eye contact. You're like, yes, I heard you and I see you. And now you go home and feel very responsible for these people until you do something. The CHW standalone benefit is what we can bill for that. This is people who are coming to us without a list. We don't know nothing about them. But if you can get them to tell you their name, their email, their date of birth, and maybe their address, we can verify if they're qualified for the standalone benefit. And anybody with Medi-Cal qualifies for the standalone benefit, like even direct Medi-Cal. And that's 12 sessions per year, I think, of just getting to help people apply for Medi-Cal, apply for ECM if you think that they should be in our ECM program. The time spent helping them apply is CHW standalone, okay? We have the contract for CHW standalone with Anthem. We just got it. Woohoo, we got that contract in December. It was a fight. We started with only ECM, okay? But the way I convinced Anthem to give me the CHW standalone benefit was because I was doing those resource fairs and my MIF list people that was from the list they gave me wasn't coming. But I was enrolling a whole bunch of people from the resource fairs as internal referrals and they noticed. And I said, I can't keep doing that for free. You ain't letting me bill for nothing. Because you only bill for outreach and ECM once they're on the list. So the fact that people are coming into our ECM from not a list was us doing it for free until I added the standalone benefit. So now we accept standalone benefit from HealthNet, Anthem, and Kaiser. We are not the primary contract with Kaiser. Kaiser only gave a prime contract to Full Circle Health, Community Partners, I think, and ILS. 3 organizations, nobody else. So I had to subcontract with Full Circle Health, and that's how I serve Kaiser clients for CalAIM programming, okay? Now, enhanced care management is we get a whole list of people from the insurance companies every month. The list of people ranges from about 100 people from every insurance company. So every single month we get 100 new clients from these MCPs to outreach to and make a phone call, a text, call, knock on their door and say, hey, you got assigned to us for ECM. Do you want your benefits? Do you want help with transportation to your doctor's appointments? Do you need help with any routine, any health things? How can we help you? Most people think we fraud and hang up the phone. And it's really interesting. ECM is people be like, what you talking about, Willis? They are so mistrustful. They don't want to hear none you got to say. So the ECM program has been very hard to implement without the standalone, which is why I decided to do this hub model, because we need more trusted faces, because we can have a million lists of people. If they don't know you, they don't like you, what you calling me for and asking, offering me things? Why you offering me this? What you gonna take from me? This is our mistrust, okay? So this is why I have to explain to you the difference in such detail. So if you have people who were on that list and you called, and let's say I assigned you a client, 100 Anthem clients. By the way, we got more than 100 Anthem clients. We have about 7,000 Anthem clients. They gave us the biggest amount of clients, which is what you guys, if y'all are ready, and you're ready to do some outreach, you gotta tell me how much you can do in a day. Then we'll go from there. But the Anthem, HealthNet, and Kaiser clients that are in ECM, even after they say yes, they don't remember they said yes, and they're confused about what it is. And that's important to know. And then we have Healthcare Access, which is Cigna, Evernorth, Blue Shield of California, HealthNet, and Kaiser. So TPF was primarily a behavioral health organization before I decided to transition into clinical case management. So we have a lot of contracts for behavioral health, and that's what these 2 bottoms one are. Remember I told you I have a for-profit and a nonprofit? Innovative Wellness Consulting is my for-profit business. That's the one where I am basically, I don't want to have a whole nother therapy staff over at my consulting firm. So I pass through all income for MHN, Carelon, Anthem, and Direct Medi-Cal to TPF to do the services. But those are our contracts. So it's important for you to just know this, because when people ask you, do you accept my insurance? Go back to this slide. I'm gonna give it to you. You don't have to ask us, just go look at it, okay? Next slide.
Insurance, is it the Medi-Cal subsidiary, or it's like just general, like if I have HealthNet as a social worker, I could use the ECM benefit?
CalAIM is it's poverty related.
Yeah.
You have to be Medi-Cal. So if HealthNet is your Medi-Cal carve out that you chose, open enrollment just ended or it's currently open, I don't know for Medi-Cal. But if you chose HealthNet when you got the option, then we can see you for CalAIM. If you chose Anthem or you chose Kaiser, we could see you. However, if you chose Direct Medi-Cal, we can't see you for ECM. We could see you for the standalone for only 12 sessions a year. So it really is important for you to be informed in this way so you can help them choose which insurance to choose. Because basically when they don't choose a carve out, they ice themselves out of all kind of programs. And people don't know that. Now you do, right? There's knowledge. Now knowledge is power. Okay, here's the eligibility for the 3 programs. So we have for CalAIM eligibility, you have the CHW standalone, ECM care, and community supports. And for healthcare access, it's behavioral health, physical somatic health, and clinical care coordination. So when it comes to healthcare access, it's like if you're working with a client who you're the case manager and you're doing CalAIM, you can definitely concurrently enroll them in healthcare access and partner with a clinical consultant who sees them regularly for therapy. And then you got to check in with, you could have we call them MDTs, CWEs with the clinical consultants. So if you guys have, like, a therapist has 3 of your clients on their caseload, you can schedule meetings with them and say, let's talk about my 3 clients and what I should be doing for them clinically. And then they can tell you, I think you should refer them to this group at this program. So it's a collaboration between the 2 programs. And sometimes a clinical consultant may act as a clinical consultant who reviews the care plans and comprehensive assessments for their own clients that they see in healthcare access. Right? So it makes it integrated. Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay.
Systematic.
What is it?
Yeah.
Somatic means the way the body feels, like the body awareness. So if you are having a client who constantly says they're nauseous, they're not sleeping, they're grinding their teeth, and they're very irritable, and they're losing their work all the time, they might be a really good referral for our somatic work with the doctor or our acupuncturist. Sometimes we have lots of specialty work for somatic because that's my specialty. When I do treat people, when I'm in practice, I utilize restorative yoga and sound healing to address the somatic symptoms that happen in our body with our trauma. Sleeplessness, grinding your teeth, irritability, anger, so that. Okay. Next slide. This is a summary of what I kind of already just said. Remember, this is intended to show you. I'm not going to go through every single slide and read to you, but this is intended to be available to you for your own knowledge and a step-by-step way to understand what your role is and who you are in the moment when you're engaging with a client. If a client tells you immediately that they have no insurance, who are they? What service line? How do you know that? Just because they told you they don't have any insurance? They obviously can't be ECM and on that list, right? So we have to use the standalone benefit, and this is your slide you go to kind of confirm that, okay? Next slide. CHW standalone services do not require ECM enrollment. No paperwork is needed. All you got to do is get their name and their date of birth and all that stuff. So this is the easiest one. You don't have to verify no benefits. They got Medi-Cal, they got a date of birth, and you got their little Medi-Cal number. You can bill sometimes even more than the 12 sessions a year, especially if there's per medical necessity. So this is the one that is sort of in an experimental phase with the state right now. We have a really great opportunity to show them that they should expand this benefit, right? We should be collecting data. That's why I ask for everything to be written down, a note for everything. Anytime you talk to a client, even if it was to help them with something before they enrolled, you should be documenting and doing a note. So one thing about the community health worker, we have various tiers of the way we train our community health workers. We have a tier 1 community health worker, which is somebody who's really good with people, really good with building relationships, but they don't really document very well, and they have a really hard time with structure. And then we have a tier 2 community health worker who is a little bit better with the structure and the documentation. Both are very needed. Sometimes we have a CHW who can do both. The tier 2 is someone who can do tier 1 and tier 2. And there is a higher pay rate for a tier 2, obviously, and something for you to consider as you're hiring, that you need to understand that tier 1 is necessary, but so is tier 2. And tier 2 is especially necessary to help maybe their tier 1s to document. If they have a deficit, sometimes they're really good at some things and not things. Know as leaders who your people are, because it's important. You cannot concurrently do CHW standalone work with the ECM client. So once they sign that ECM enrollment form, no more standalone. Make sense? You can't even pick that when you do a documentation because they're already enrolled in ECM. We would get in trouble for double billing and it won't work. It'll get denied anyway. You won't get paid. Okay, so standalone is before enrollment, before a yes. If they say no to ECM, but I like you, I'll talk to you next month, you now have a client you could check in about 12 times a year. Makes sense? So CHWs can have a caseload, should they so choose, if they build relationships with people. Okay, next slide. Here's a quick reference for that standalone benefit. So what it is, preventative outreach-based health support. who qualifies, Medi-Cal members with or without ECM referral or enrollment. Now, the reason why I say with or without ECM enrollment, it really should be referral, not enrollment, because you can never do CHW standalone if somebody's already enrolled in ECM. If they've already said yes, you can't do this. So if they're in consideration mode, up until they say yes, all those dates of service, all those contacts you have with them until they say yes can be billed as a CHW standalone. Just, I would say what I often do is I like write a little note off to the side, 1/26/26, this client's first initial last name, did outreach, send them an email, and then I try to go put that in a note later, because that could be enough of a note. They don't have to be like, had a whole conversation about this or that. The system doesn't need that with the CHW. It's only that you did it, you saw them, and there was an action taken. Assessment required, no assessment required. So we usually do measurement-based care. We send out an assessment through a digital app called Blueprint Health. You don't have to do that here, because all you're trying to do is getting them to get either enrolled in ECM or in therapy with somebody or in a house, right? Or safe or off the street or away from that DV guy who's following them. You know, like all those things that we need to help people with is this benefit, and it's available to you through your health insurance, which I think is quite amazing, honestly. Scope of work, outreach, health education, navigation, and referrals. Another thing a CHW standalone provider can do is health promotion and health education. So if you want to do a stress workshop, or you want to do a financial health workshop, or I heard mechanic, I love like innovative things because I'm very creative. So like if you did a little mechanic for stress relief, like fix your car so you don't have to pay $1 million. I don't know, whatever the health promotion is, we will help you promote it. We'll make you a flyer. We'll put it in our newsletter. We'll put it on our social media, and we'll try to get people to go to your thing. Because as long as you talk about it reducing stress or increasing health, we think it's health promotion and health education, and we will help you bill for it and get paid for it. You get paid as a CHW health promoter or health educator with an individual or a small group. You get paid a different rate for each amount of people. So it's a bigger group, more money you get paid. Smaller group, less money you get paid. 2 people count as a group. 1 person is individual, you still get paid. Okay. What are some examples? Outreach calls, benefit education, appointment reminders, find help referrals. So if an LCM asks you for help, if a clinical consultant asks you for help, it's a community health worker, and it's for healthcare access, let's say. So if the client is enrolled in therapy and we found out that she just got kicked out of her house, but she's not Medi-Cal, she doesn't qualify for ECM, we could still do the Medi-Cal standalone if some of the kids do. Right? So we get creative here. 3 of your kids got Medi-Cal? What you need? You need a mom's group? Anybody got some moms who want to have a little group? Like this is how we have to collaborate and make it work. Okay, so that's why I made this to hopefully be as clear for you, again, to reference so you don't have to remember everything, okay? Can CHW refer to community supports? You're gonna learn a little bit more about what community supports and why we put big X's there like that. Because community supports is the thing that people actually want when they say yes to us. So we send out calls and we be like, hey, would you want to do ECM? And they'll be like, why would I do it? Well, now you get eligible for us helping you to coordinate transportation to your doctor's appointments, your court visits, work, if it helps your health, all that. You got a car? No, I got a car. Do you want this? Do you also like, how's your housing? How's your food? Do you have problems? Are you ever worried that you don't have enough money for food after 2 days? And then sometimes people don't want to say yes, but when you tell them, well, we can give you medically tailored meals for 12 weeks where you get full blown meals, warm meals that you just heat up for free because we referred you to that, then they say yes. So often then there's also transitional housing support for 6 months. They'll pay your rent for 6 months. They'll give you a $7,500 housing deposit. They'll assign you a housing navigator. If if you are looking for a house and you're, kind of moving around from your friend's house, couch and stuff, that counts as home housing insecurity. So then it qualifies you for the community supports and the housing trio, which is a health benefit. You get that $7,500. You get that housing navigator who helps you do your application, who they'll pay that fee for Craigslist, or, they have to pay fees to look for rentals. They'll do all that for you. That is the community supports benefit. You have to first be enrolled in ECM to get community supports. And there's a big gap in that. People don't understand that. They just want the house. How give me the housing. You didn't do your comprehensive assessment and care plan and all the onboarding to become a part of ECM to get that. So that's a huge gap in our community, and our CHWs are going to have to help us fill that educational gap. When CHW triggers ECM, when the CHW sees that the person is unhoused, is pregnant, has a medical fragile thing with their kids, substance abuse issue, overutilizes the systems, but they weren't on the MIF list, the CHW can trigger that we self-refer them into ECM. So this is just important for the CHW who is doing standalone work before the ECM referral to know. Okay, any questions before we move into ECM?
I think your point is important about incorporating the families. That's something that I learned in working with you is we'll be staffing a case and it'll be like a mom with 5 kids, but the mom is the identified client. But then all 5 of the kids can be clients as well. And then you're servicing the whole family, and maybe there's needs that they can be kids that could be solely met through the mom.
And actually that mom you're talking about, the identified client, was a child. And I found out the mom needed services by calling the mom directly myself. And I was like, yo, there's a kid here who I see I have an intake, but they're trying to discharge you. Did you want to be discharged? She's like, no, I've been waiting. I got all my 5 other kids I sent too. So we didn't even know as an internal system that all the kids were her kids because they all had different last names. So I had to like put it together. And then I said, you need a Bever. You need to do an intake packet for us too. And then I got her enrolled. So that's how we got her enrolled. But it was the client who was the minor client, age 12, who was the initial client, that because she wasn't responsive to phone calls, we were going to discharge her if I wouldn't have called. And the only reason I called is I noticed it was a little black boy and he had done 1 assessment. I was like, nobody ever saw him after this. So I just was doing like an audit. And I found that family from an audit, me as the leader, you know? So it falls between the cracks, this piece, but it's very important. And thank you for uplifting that. Next slide. Now this is ECM. ECM comes from a referral. They must have been referred by the MCP. That's it. Or we must have referred them in. If we did not refer them in and they accepted it, keyword, they accepted it, okay, then you cannot start seeing these clients. ECM is a very restrictive program. I think it's done on purpose to be that restrictive so they don't get those housing supports and food that you see all that is. So I'm trying to make it more clear, less blinds in front of it all. So you can see that, yes, they come from a list on the insurance companies, but the insurance company does nothing to help us, like the people know we coming. Like, you know, they give them to us on a list and then they say, go and contact these people and start them in ECM. And we call them, they're like, who are you? And oh, why would Anthem send you to me? Anthem or HealthNet or Kaiser, I think in my opinion, should send them a letter and say, you referred to this program, here's your provider. I've been very much advocating for that happening, but it's not. So what that means is these people are on Medi-Cal and they're assigned to TPF. Like, so they're already our clients. They have been assigned to us. They can't be seen by another ECM provider once they are assigned to us. Okay, that's important to note because people poach clients from ECM providers, especially when clients don't really know what they're receiving or who they're working. Remember I told you they don't even remember you even though you sat there with them for 2 hours? ECM is very much impacted by that. So if you're a community health worker who is helping us to enroll people from the MIF list, it's important that you do practices that help them remember who you are and understand what ECM is when they say yes to enrollment so that they can understand what these next steps are. You need to be enrolled and do your comprehensive assessment and care plan to be able to get these extra benefits like housing and food and recuperative care and rehabilitation. There's so many, I think there's 14 service lines in community supports, and they're all real actionable things like beds. If you need a bed for actually just getting out of the hospital, that's why I think Joy, youth services. If you have extra rooms available, if any of you guys have housing, having a contract with community supports to be an extra bed when somebody just got out of a hospital is a huge opportunity for you. It's a community support, and they could not have enrolled in being in your bed without being an ECM first. So that's our thing we gotta fill. Yeah, follow me. They must meet one or more of the ECM populations of focus. So not, you don't have to have two, but at least one. And the one population of focus we've been kind of getting away with is the experiencing serious mental illness. Cause I'm kind of like figuring that we all traumatized by the world ever since 2019. So we are collectively having a trauma event, therefore they're eligible. That's what I be saying. Like, they should be. But also if we ask them, do you kind of jump from your friends' houses or you staying with a friend? You with your boyfriend, you hate him, but you live with him because you can't go nowhere else. Like, to me, that's housing insecurity. Like, I will make that as the reason. Like, you still with that man because of what? Okay, you qualify for ECM.
That through the girlfriend that he was staying with, and I talked to the kid about it, like, well, he's not homeless because he's living with his girlfriend. And then the kid said, well, he's just one fight away from being homeless. He can't.
One fight.
Right.
One fight, you cheating. We ain't gonna live though. You still did, you know? Justice involved or transitioning from institutional care. Now, we don't really have the justice involved population of focus, but I can add it pretty easily. I didn't add it as one of my contracted populations of focus initially because I feel like focusing on children and youth and mental health is enough. Like to also, because I didn't really have a lot of relationships with prisons or law enforcement. In fact, I'd be like, if I see Popo, I'll walk the other way, even if I didn't do nothing. So, you know, I grew up in the IE. I ain't gonna have no conversations, you know. So that wasn't me, but that doesn't mean I can't add it if you guys want to do that. So I'm always open to negotiation on what populations we should add to our contracts, but these are the ones I do have contracts for. Mhm. All right, any questions? High ED? So high ED means that they keep going into like, you know, Canyon Ridge. What are those ones you get locked up, 5150s?
Emotionally disturbed.
Yeah, emotionally disturbed, but it's like they're highly using it and the medical system can tell they're highly using it. So that's how they made it on our list. A lot of people made it on our MIF list because they're high utilizers of crisis intervention in mental health services. Like they don't go to a regular therapist. They just keep getting in trouble and locked up somewhere or put somewhere on like care court type stuff. I think that's where the ED.
Is that because they don't know how to navigate or they haven't had the help to navigate the proper program to get in? You know, that's why they keep going to IED because that's all they know how to do. So
Can I just say the world is horrible? And I think that some of us can cope and some of us can't. Some of us have resilience and resources and family and support and some of us don't. So the people, I don't think it's an individual thing. I truly think it's systemic, it's subjective, it's objective, it's all the things. So yes and no. Can I answer?
yeah.
Yes and no. Mhm.
I remember correctly for high utilization, one of the things that also qualify are to the point of crisis centers. One of the factors of that is high utilization of emergency rooms and emergency services. A lot of times they're coming in and out of the hospitals, and sometimes depending on the problem, I'll ask you to catch them as they come out of the emergency room. This is a heavy cost in the hospital, but if you have more preventative or like case management, it would reduce that like economic burden on the hospital system also.
And Johnny knows, he does our data, so. That's real. All right, next slide. Oh, go ahead.
Just go ahead. Why provider? Why just talk about a medical provider or we split provider? Like, they sort of referral initiated by provider.
Uh-huh.
That means like medical.
That's you.
Oh, that's.
You are all the providers. Remember when I did my play therapy definition? Mental health practitioner. Once you have an MPI, what are you? Yes, you are. Look at y'all. Y'all got MPIs, I think. Hello. Congratulations. Because that, you know what that means? Your MPI is owned by you, not the organization you work for. This means that if you get authority in this and expertise in this, you just go find yourself a little DBA. And now you got a whole business model that you can do because you are a community health worker and you can bill Medi-Cal for being a community health worker as a healthcare provider. Okay? This is freedom. MPI is a freedom. My license was my freedom. My MPI associated with my license, which I'm not eligible for without my license, is my freedom to be able to build these programs. If you do not take authority over your own MPI, you let people use it willy-nilly, you don't know what it is, that's you. I'm trying to help you. All right. Program summary of ECM. ECM is required for high-touch care coordination. So if they don't enroll in the ECM and they say the CHW standalone benefit, that's it. You only got 12 sessions. Even if they really need you, that's when you start having them hard targeted conversations. Let me know if you need my help with boundary setting and redirection. There's other trainings I do. But essentially, if it becomes really high touch as a standalone, it is not the standalone and you need to refer out for therapy. People need therapy. If they're using you like that, you just a community health worker practitioner, that is not right. You have to have boundaries. That is not your role. They're going to only trust you. Don't fall into that trap. They don't only trust you. They only trust you right now because you're giving them something. They trust somebody else tomorrow because they're going to give them something else. Don't fall into the ego. People love the healers when you're helping them. ECM is designed for members with complex medical, behavioral health, and social needs, frequent emergency or hospital use, chronic conditions, pregnant, newly parenting. We have a particular focus on birth equity here. I have been a leader in the AIM. I don't know if a lot of you know the AIM initiative. I was the founding community lead of the San Gabriel Valley AIM initiative. And then further, our organization got funded through the Black Equity Collective and the AIM Village Fund. So we are one of the primary leaders in helping Black mamas and children to empower their wellness. And that's also one of the primary missions of the Black Mental Health Task Force, Black Mamas and Babies. We do also help other ethnic groups, but I happen to be a Black mama who had a Black baby. So this is from my lens. But if there are any providers who are Latino, Asian, Pacific Islander, any type of population that want to work in birth equity, we welcome you and all your ideas and all your groups, because I can only do what I can do in my lane, and I'm open to helping you create your lane. Yes. Housing instability and homelessness and significant barriers to accessing care. So if you know a lot of people who just can't do nothing and can't get to nothing and they always can't do nothing, that's the person for ECM. You know, they always got an excuse, put them in ECM. Because ECM at its base level is routine development. Cognitive behavioral therapy from a case management perspective, which is why I think it needs to have a clinician at the top. Most ECM programs don't have a clinician at the top. They have a dietitian or a nutritionist who's signing off on things. But how that gonna work, I don't know. ECM enrollments activate coordinated whole person care. So let me give you a little bit of a history in the framework of lovely Mary and Sylvia, who started our South LA journey. But whole person care used to be run by Department of Mental Health. Department of Mental Health lost the contract, I want to say in 2022 to the state, and the state reallocated whole person care to privatize it with insurance companies. Therefore, CalAIM was developed. Now, specialty mental health is buried in your health insurance benefits. I don't know if it's a win or a lose. It's a lose if nobody gets a contract with the MCPs to do really good work. So we really are on the front line. I really have to say, we are the generals. I'm the general, I would say, on the front line. I'm in front. I got a horse. There's a flame. I might have wings and a dragon. Okay, so let's imagine. And then you guys are here. You got your shields. You got all your things. Maybe some of y'all are on horses and generals too. I hope. If you identify individual. All I'm saying is all the money for specialty mental health for people who were suffering in foster care and group homes, they disbanded public, non-public schools. Everything's disappearing for our people. When I say our people, I mean our people who suffer, our children in foster care, the ones they locked up in the non-public schools anyway. I watched all them kids be sent away. I was pissed off. That's why I got in here. I was like, what's that? What'd you say? You're gonna pay for case management? Because in behavioral health billing, you cannot bill for case benefit. So every time I was going to IEP for a family, I was doing a parent consult with these moms, I was talking to the grandma, I was outside with this person, I was having meals with them for 5 hours. That was a 5-hour session that I done had. I got paid 30 minutes. Thank you very much. But that family needed it and they trusted me. And when it was time for them to get treatment, they did it. And I was willing to do it, which is why I had to start a nonprofit, because everything was for free. Okay, but this is the difference, right? Cal AIM is only funded until December of 2026. 27? 27. 27. Johnny, you know better.
I think 26 is currently under, the new potential bill is under review at the state level to go federal and come back to states. But in a lot of ways, that just means there's no guarantee. The current state of ECM is through 2026, I believe, with 2027 being the prospective new like cycle of how they're going to implement it.
And if the feds have to weigh in, then 2020.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So long story short, let me summarize this. If we do not share our impact story of what we're about to do here today, because nobody else is doing this, okay? If we do not share our social impact and have data and the ability to tell the story of why this was successful and how people benefited and felt better and decreased maladaptive health outcomes and things like that, then when they have all those votes at the state, whether this waiver should be renewed. So the December 26th is the end of the waiver that's current to pay for what we're talking about through health insurance and everything. If the waiver is not continued, then who knows what's going to happen, because specialty mental health is no longer with DMH. It seems to me that our current administration, we're going to call it that, doesn't care if we don't have the healthcare resources we need. It doesn't care if the state actually has funding for Medicare and Medi-Cal. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the reason why I'm giving these visuals of the front line, the dragon and the horse and all that, is because we are literally there. You know, this is the new advocacy work, the quiet, not the marching on their paperwork and their money.
Yeah. So what I hear you sharing is the Department of Health doesn't have the wherewithal to access all these benefits. Now it's up to the community to let everybody else know, hey, you got these benefits available to you. Let me show you how to access them. Is that?
Yes, I'm trying to tell you that they decimated systems and departments. There is no more Department of Education. Department of Mental Health lost the authority to manage specialty mental health, and they privatized it and gave it to their insurance company friends. And their insurance company friends do not want to pay for anything. And they're letting everybody not do the work of this because they're ready for it to fail. They got enough money to do it for 3 years.
So we need to be essential, so when 1226 comes, they understand how critical we are to our community.
Thank you for this. All right. Any questions? All right, next slide. Here's a quick reference for ECM. And again, we're going to give you these more questions. You can always do the Post-its. Like Paulette said, you can email us later. We are around. So what is ECM? Whole Person High Touch Care Coordination. It used to be called Whole Person Care when it was Department of Mental Health. Anybody new? Anybody ever did whole person care? Worked in whole person care? Don't know, sound familiar? Go research it, because it was a whole thing. Lots of funding, just gone. Medi-Cal members, meaning ECM populations of focus, means that it's somebody who's a high utilizer or chronic condition, unstable. ECM is not just for a normal person who's going through a little bit of adjustment, a transition in life, some crisis. It's somebody who's had a long-term evidence of that, and that would make them eligible, okay? They usually come from a MIF list, internal referral, like I mentioned, or a community encounter. You do need an enrollment form, so you cannot start being an ECM without doing the enrollment form and signing the paperwork. And then immediately after you do the ECM form, we have 45 days after enrollment to do a comprehensive assessment. And a comprehensive assessment is just basically a gathering of the client's information. When was your last dentist appointment? Do you go to the doctor? You have any crises? Are you mentally unwell? Are you physically unwell? Your kids okay? You got childcare? All the questions, all the things. What was your last this? And are you pregnant? Did you go to OGBYN? Blah, 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 like all the things medically. And there's a form that you complete and follow. Then after the comprehensive assessment is a care plan. And the care plan is not a treatment plan like a therapy treatment plan. It's a care plan where the LCM and the client work together to come up with a goal. And the goal is, what's my primary problem right now? So if your primary problem is housing, most likely your treatment plan goals, you can have more than one, you can have 1 to 3 goals, right? Your treatment plan goal will be most likely like, I will be referred to a housing navigator or meet with my housing navigator once a month for the next 6 months. And that's a goal. Because you as the LCM have to help make sure they meet with their housing navigator. It's not you. It might be an external housing navigator to who you referred them to, and it might be somebody on our team, but it wouldn't be the same person as the LCM. Because the LCM can't be playing the housing navigator and the CHW and the therapist. That's what we be trying to do, but that's not going to work. It's going to kill us, like the individual, right? So we have to make sure we make up our support squads that when you have a caseload of clients that are heavily housing, that you have a good relationship with a housing navigator, whether it's one of somebody on your internal team or somebody externally that you're referring to, which is why it took so much effort to find organizations like yours that do have relationships with housing people, because you're going to need it. People are unhoused right now. And one more thing, the measurement, we're going to talk about measurement-based care, but we use Blueprint Health, as I mentioned. And it's really helpful because it's an app on people's phones and it tracks steps, it tracks sleep, it tracks diet, it tracks depression, anxiety symptoms, eating disorder, any kind of assessment that the clinician or the LCM assigned to them based on what they told us will help track digitally. And we could see graphics of it, of whether they're getting better, whether they're getting worse. And that's how we're going to tell a good story in December 2026, because we got data from measurement-based care that's clinical and sound, and we're using an evidence-based model in our approach. Okay. We would like you to do 3 to 6 touches per month as an LCM, 1 minimum, right? So let's say you got a client that's just don't respond to nothing. But as long as you at least called them, sent them a newsletter. We also ask our LCMs to draft a monthly newsletter, like with their picture, and be like, hey, I'm gonna have a walking group tomorrow, and send that out to their caseload every month to see if they will come and engage, or whatever type of group you want to have, what you're really good at and like that you wouldn't mind doing with a group of people. That's what kind of group you probably should do as an LCM. And then if those people come to that group, that counts as one of your touch points. So if you only require 1 touch point a month and you have this one group that they always show up at, then you've done your touch point and you get paid your one-time payment per month, but at least touching them once. But we would recommend 3 to 6 because ECM clients generally need more than 1. Because when you talk to them one time, even if you talk to them for 5 minutes, that counts as 1. These are not sessions, by the way. You do not have to sit there for an hour with people for a touch point. If you called that person, that was a touch point. You did it. I called the client answered, I reminded them about their appointment, touch point, do a note. You'll get paid your one-time payment per month. But some clients need more than that. I have a client, we're not going to say the name, but he is the most needy client in the world. I have almost somehow become his therapist / case manager over everybody else because he has a lot of combative, very angry behaviors. Even if you're helping him, he's like threatening. And when he does it to me, I'm like, you ain't talking to me like that. And I keep going. But we mostly do this engagement in email. And every email I download as a PDF and make a note. So I think I have about 50 notes to add for the past 2 months that I'm kind of behind on. So if a person is emailing you, it also counts. You could download the PDF and add it as a note. Okay. Required for, that also counts for standalone too, by the way. So email correspondence counts as a touch point. Written correspondence, in-person correspondence. Calls, text, okay? Text also count. Screenshot, take a picture, upload it, send a text to this client. It's a no. Can client decline ECM? Yes, so if they're already in ECM and they said yes, and they're tired of you asking all the questions on the comp assessment, they say don't want to be it, they could say no on the day they said no, because all in between they said yes and no, you about to build. Yes, because you did work.
Yes.
If you do not do notes between the yes and the let go of me, then you did all that work for free. Okay, so please remember that. Next slide. Now, this is more detail about community supports. CPF is a community supports provider, as I mentioned, for Kaiser, but we are still in the beginning of that phase. We have not really been trained by Kaiser on how to give people housing deposits. I heard that I have to give you the $7,500 out of my pocket and then get reimbursed. And I was like, what if there was like 10 of them? I was like, at what? Like 75,000? Like I just have to find it? I don't know. So, so let's just pause. So I like to say I refer out to that because that sounds a little weird, but I do think that's what the MCPs are doing. And I don't understand how that's possible, right? Like, I don't know. That seems a little weird, but I'll keep informing you as I learn. But in the end, if they are enrolled in ECM with us, we can refer to any community supports that already does have the contract. So that feels a little bit like freedom to me. I'm okay with not having community supports, honestly, because it sounds like a lot of responsibility. Have a house with rooms, and like how did they come in, or I don't know. There's a lot. So if you are interested in getting more involved with me, collaborating with me in a leadership capacity to increase our contracts and our holding in the community supports lane, let me know. But right now we're going to focus on CHW and the ECM and referring out to community supports providers. And the way we refer out to community supports providers is through a system called Find Help, which it'll just be like, who do you want to refer the client to? Housing, food. You just check a box and it sends it to them digitally. And then the person we send it to should reach out to the client, but the LCM has to be the one to make sure that the person we referred them to did or help them. Yeah, help them continue the process. So that's where the LCM is still important, even when we referred out. Okay. A client may be eligible for CS if they are actively enrolled in ECM. You're not eligible for CS if not also ECM. That's just the rule. You can't skip ECM basically. You can concurrently be enrolled in healthcare access, community support, and ECM, but no standalone benefit, because why? ECM is always connected to CS. You can't have CS without ECM. All right. They all need to do a comp assessment and a care plan. They need to meet specific eligibility, meaning they have to still have Medi-Cal. So a lot of people are like leaving Medi-Cal by not doing their paperwork. And I think it's on purpose by the state also, or are these people like, I really think systems do weird stuff like, here's all your services, but let's pretend you don't really know about them and hide it from you as much as possible. So I kind of think that's what's happening here. But it's up to us to kind of fill those gaps. Okay, and you was nodding. You seem to know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's happening with Medi-Cal right now for undocumented people. So if you know people that are undocumented, where I live, the Medi-Cal provider is flagging them so that like if they come to us, we see that their renewal is going to come due, because if they don't renew, they can never re-enroll in Medi-Cal, only if they are pregnant or have an emergency.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like they don't let them try
Overnight
again?
At 19. So if they are a minor, if they're 18 and under and they're in their Medi-Cal lapses, it will allow them to re-enroll. But at 19, on, through the lifespan, once
They'll
you
never be able to
re-enroll,
get it again.
Never.
So do you hear why it's so important for our CHWs to know this? To say this kind of stuff? It's really important. Thank you for that context. Yeah, they're getting cray out here. They're basically, if they're doing this to people, they're taking all these options out for them. None of this resource is theirs anymore if they don't do their paperwork to re-enroll in Medi-Cal. That's horrible. They know these people are like living transient lifestyles, no computers sometimes. To do that is cruel. Next slide, please. So no ECM enrollment equals no community supports. I keep saying, I put it on every slide because I feel like people would just be like, well, can I just do? No, you cannot. Even if a client is homeless, if they do not have Medi-Cal and are also enrolled in ECM, they cannot get housing deposits, housing navigators, food boxes, all the things on the list, okay? They can't get none of it. Community supports cannot be requested until ECM enrollment is active. I said it in like 5 different ways. But anyway, here's all the different supports you get as community supports as a part of your medical benefits. Any questions about these? Let me let you look at them. So day habilitation. So does somebody want to do like I keep wanting people to do it, but I'm gonna put it out here. Like if you have an idea for this and you want to do it, it's yours like immediately. Day habilitation. I would love like an after school program for kids that's like yoga or art. As long as it's like a set amount of hours, I want to say like 3 hours period. It's a rehab program. So we can create that and build that out more. Where is there short-term post-hospitalization housing? If you have a room that can accommodate somebody who just had surgery, then you can do that as a community supports. Or if you know people who do these things and we can help them get contracts so that we have places to refer people to. Right now, there's not a lot of people to refer. I'd be sitting there referring people to these things and those people never reach out because I think even though they have contracts, they're not ready to service.
My daughter she can do that. She's a Pilates instructor and yoga instructor, and she has a whole wellness program that can, actually, she has a program already created for schools.
Yeah. So yes, that's why I facilitate this and I let you guys know that I'm truly a partner, but you have to be real and you have to be intentional and you have to be willing to understand that I'm a business owner and you're a business owner and this is a collaboration and paperwork will be signed and things like that. But if you down, I'm down. Next slide. Quick reference for CS, health-related social services that address housing, nutrition, recovery, and stability. Again, on every slide, I think I'm just like really trying. It's like like some kind of, I'm gonna convince you. What is not possible?
Stand alone.
Yeah. All that. I like the engagement. Enrollment required, yes. Enrollment in ECM is required, but also referrals first have to happen to do CS. So just because like LCM says, oh, you could have housing, they can't have promised that without also doing the referral and find help and documenting it in the care plan and comprehensive assessment. Because if we don't have a comprehensive assessment and a care plan, community supports won't be approved. So after we do the referral, the community support is going to ask for the comp assessment and the care plan so they could start. Because remember, we referred to them so they could start the housing or start the rehab, right? Or the after school program, whatever we're doing. But only if we have the documentation to prove that it was medically necessary. And that's what the comp assessment and the care plan proved, that we did some type of assessment to say that they need all these healthcare benefits for housing. Because otherwise we would just send them to the housing department. What are they called? Yeah, like they would do it. But because this is healthcare related, this is why we do it. Next slide. Now this is healthcare access. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I've already, but this is my lane. Like I love therapy. I love therapeutic intervention. I love people healing, but people can't heal when they're in immediate crisis and are unhoused and worried about their child or their safety or somebody dragging them and their neighbor down the street, killing us, shooting us in the head. All that is not possible without mental health stabilization and the resource being provided. That's why I think CalAIM and healthcare access are concurrent. They cannot exist outside of each other. If you do not have a solid way to stabilize somebody's mental health while they're also waiting for housing and also waiting for food, then you're just not doing it right, in my opinion. So they're embedded. And if we don't have enough therapists on the team, that's fine because we have enough therapists out there. There's interns, there's a whole bunch of private practices. There's everybody who think they know therapy, who are a coach or a life coach, or I do this. Refer them to that and let them talk to them. But the whole point is that you made the referral and you made sure they went. and that they're getting that safe space, that ventilation, that processing, and they're not doing it to you. Because your little 5-minute, 10-minute check-in is all it's supposed to be. If it's becoming an hour, 2 hours, what you doing? Maybe not even therapy. What you doing? Too much. Whoever said that. Next slide.
Next slide.
This is just another more detailed summary of the way I view our healthcare access program. So if you were going to take this, because I'm empowering you. This is just what I'm trying to give my lessons of my understanding of how we want ECM and our behavioral health programming and our medical programming to move forward. But I will say that if you see healthcare access as our program, I invite you to think about healthcare access as a pathway for your organizations as well, for behavioral health and medical, whether it's internally something that you build or you create healthcare access pathways for referrals. That's going to be really important because otherwise you're going to be overburdened by that piece if it's not concurrently existing like it's existing in ours. And we learned that lesson the hard way. I'm tired. Next slide. We have something called a comprehensive wellness exam. Has anybody heard of a multidisciplinary team meeting? Sounds familiar? So generally in the clinical landscape, MDT is when like a social worker from DCFS, maybe from the housing authority, maybe the school social worker, maybe the foster youth social worker, they all have a fun meeting. Usually it's called because intervention, or maybe it's called because a successful thing is about to happen, about to be adopted, you go back to your parents, you're gonna go to auntie, we have to talk about this plan. So our CWE MDT is a consistent weekly meeting that we call client care meeting. The LCMs who are seeing clients for us, it's mandatory for them to attend a client care meeting. This is because you are sort of in a silo, especially if you're a hybrid lead care manager, meaning that you're working from home. And then if you're coming to us as a lead care manager in person, it's probably just to like do direct client contact or outreach. So there's no time for you to like consult about anything. And so you're going to have to need time to be like, this person called me every day crying and all their assessments say this, this, and this. And you deserve the opportunity to get a case presentation just like therapists do. So in the therapist world, our clinicians should have group supervision. And in that group supervision, at the beginning of every group supervision, we allow case presentation about a client. And then everybody in the room, the other clinicians, give feedback about ideas they have for treatment. The person will usually review their history, their intake, what has happened so far, what goals have you been working on, what has worked, what hasn't, and then everybody on the team gives feedback. That is our model for clinicians as well as case managers. So that's why LCMs have to go, because you have to be able to raise your hand and be like, I got 3 clients that are driving me crazy. I don't think they should be on my caseload. I think we need a higher level of care and bring in a therapist to be their case manager for the next few months. And we will do that. That's the point of the support squad model, is that the clinical consultant can take over case management, the check-ins for a while. If this person is out of pocket, sometimes the skill set of the clinician is needed. We are trained to do this. We are trained to be like, what you say? Is that a boundary I have to make? Did you not sign your intake paperwork? Do you not know that I'm a medical professional and this is per medical necessity? You cannot do that as a CHW. You cannot do that as an LCM. So you need to understand that the reason why we have roles that we have is for the protection of all of us. If we all stay in our lanes, we are safer. Comprehensive wellness exam is also, this is our nurse practitioner. The CWE is particularly related to the medical part of our component. If somebody has constant like eye issues, ear issues, sleep issues, things going on that you could see that they're escalating, they're losing their housing constantly because of their mental health, you need to escalate to a CWE. So either a licensed therapist like myself, I'm one of the clinical consultants. I would generally take clients for short-term treatment, particularly children, because I'm the only one with the children's specialty and the play therapy specialty. And then we have Dr. Kennard. She's the medical consultant. Like I mentioned, we have Courtney, who's mostly leading meetings for us. from a clinical perspective, and then we have other interns and so on who could act as that clinical oversight to a LCM or a CHW. But it's important for you to know that that CWE is intended to be a document the client can use to get what they need in the medical system. So remember I mentioned the regional center referral. We had an adult, a Medi-Cal client who had been going to all these doctors to try to get diagnosed as ADHD because she knew something was going on with her, but they weren't listening to her. And we gave her assessments. Our doctor identified, we look like you have ADHD. And she was so grateful because she was able to get medication and now she's stable in college. So the thing is, why wasn't they giving her medicine? I don't know. Who knows? But she got her needs met because she was able to get a CWE. And it's just a templated document of a report from a doctor or a licensed therapist about all the recommendations and referrals, and also all of the assessments we gave. We put all the outcomes in there. So it's also evidence-based and backed by measurement. So they can't come back and say, why'd you give her this? Well, all the assessments said she had ADHD. Why didn't you give her this? Did you give her any assessments? And then we start having them looks, you know what I said? We having a conversation? Doctor? They're like, no, we're not having a conversation. Because you wasn't doing no measurement-based care. You wasn't doing no documentation with these people. Why were they your clients? Next slide. So this is my baby. I think healthcare access, we're working on growing that in a couple of years. For now, CalAIM is where we are because CalAIM is where we are. And CalAIM is going to disappear. So I'm putting a lot of energy in this. But I do think to wrap around the community with behavioral health and medical services is really important. So it cannot be only TPF who are the healthcare access providers. We need more partners for referrals for mental health. So if you have any of that, please bring through. Maybe we make more of a resource list of who we refer to. And also we need some of these organizations to be added to Find Help. Find Help is a platform that is free for organizations to register in. So if your organization isn't in there, then guess what people can't do when they refer people to community supports? You can't be referred. Find Help, FINDHELP. There's also Unite Us. It's another closed loop referral system, but they're out there. So you need your organizations registered on. Next slide. 211. 211 isn't a referral platform like Find Help is, but it will also find you resources that can be covered by your insurance. And 211 is also an ECM provider, by the way, but their ECM provision is a little bit different. It's mostly just phone calls. Populations of focus. I kind of went over this a little bit. These are the populations we serve per our contract. So this isn't just a list of people like, we like serving these people. These are actually listed on the contract with this language. So this is who is eligible for ECM. And then down here is this is who is eligible for community supports underneath our Kaiser contract, which are not really operating, but it might be coming soon. Okay, Devin, I get a break.
I don't know if I can follow that energy. Okay, thank you.
Well,
And I do want to just clarify too, the 2026 N for CalAIM doesn't mean that Medi-Cal in this new form is going away. So it's not that we're investing all this time and effort into making sure that individuals get the care and support that they need so that in 2026 it's not there. It just means that the access to all of our services won't be here to help people navigate this whole thing. So I'm going to make that clear. So you guys are here right on time so that way we can do all this together. And the populations of focus, this is kind of interesting because for all the organizations in this room, these are our clients. So I run a Project Fatherhood program in Long Beach, and all of my clients absolutely meet one of these populations of focus bullets. So the slide is here for you to read. And I also want to just add, we're not gatekeepers at all because we recognize that individuals need help and they need support, they need care. And if we can make them eligible for that help, support, and care and find a way to get the revenue coming into your organization so you can keep your lights on and continue to help more individuals, that's what we're going to do. So I'm so excited that Nakia is positioning this, even though the paperwork says that individuals must meet 2 or more things in order for eligibility. What Nakia is saying is meet one of them and we will help you understand how they can still be eligible for all of the services. Does that make sense? Yep, excellent. Okay. The other thing I do want to just add that I am standing here as a testimony because I was over exaggerating when I said the first time I met Nakia, she said, I will sue you if you leave. That was the second time. The first time was through JCOD. We were in an alumni network together, and there were 3 or 4 organizations, and we were all on this one Zoom, and we were processing what we're doing. And I explained what my organization does. And my frustration is grant writing. And it's I have to raise at least $600,000 every year, and how frustrating that is. And she was like, "You do what?" And that same side eye that you. So what are you doing? Like this, you can get paid for this work, and this is exactly how. So I got to subcontract with her for this, and you all have this opportunity now too. So this is absolutely excellent. So the big question here. How do you get these individuals that fall under this population of focus? Who's controlling it? Thank you. All right. So one of them is through a MIF list. That's the member information form. File. Thank you. And there's also is mail. Are they still doing mails? Maybe. Okay, just a MIF list. So each managed care panel has a list of individuals that, as Nakia said earlier, they are not able to get a hold of. So they're giving it to us to get a hold of these individuals on their behalf. We will receive a list of about 100 people every month. Nakia is not exaggerating when she says there's about 7,000 people on that list. There's no way for one organization to reach out to all 7,000 individuals. So I want to make it really clear that there are a number of organizations out there that are recruiting community-based organizations to work under them as a subcontract to provide services with a percentage that gets kicked back to that other entity. They do not have a 7,000 client list myth at all. This is unique for the Therapeutic Play Foundation. So you will not get this anywhere else. Full Circle is someone that we're working with right now. They don't give you a list of clients for you to go out and recruit, and then you can receive revenue for. You have to generate it yourself. So this is a unique opportunity that Nakia can provide, because she has all of these individuals right now that need to be outreached to. So this is an automatic source of potential revenue for you right off the bat. Does that make sense? Are you following me? Okay, perfect.
And by the way, that $7, it used to be 10,000. We got it down, but it was a glitch from God. But Anthem called it a glitch. We gave you all these clients on accident. We can't take them away. You can't take them away. Why? Because they already assigned you. I was like, but they mine? So that's why I built all this, because they're mine. I'm responsible for them. You're going to give me time to build the system to serve them? And they said yes. And Anthem has been a really good partner, but it was a glitch, you guys. It wasn't like, it was a glitch in like some technology.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so when there are individuals on the list, there is an outreach requirement. So you're required to make 5 attempts in order to get these individuals from the list into being your clients. This is the fastest or the fast track way of an individual being able to receive ECM services, and then after that receive community supports. So if the MCP already identifies them as being ECM eligible and gives you this list, they're already our clients. And then Nakia is sharing that list with you. They are now your clients to outreach to. So you get paid for those outreach attempts. And the way that payment works is different for each managed care panel. And that gets reviewed in your individual contracts. Does that make sense? You're good? Excellent. Okay. All right. Next slide. So that's one way. It's through the managed care panel sending you a list directly. The other way, which I'm going to tell you just from experience is more successful, is from community-based referrals, meaning you. So you're all community-based organizations, and you all network with other community-based organizations. When you're reaching out to a client who was referred to you by yourself, how much more likely are they to pick up the phone or to fill out a form or to answer questions, right?
More
if
likely.
If someone calls, thank you for answering. It was not rhetorical, by the way. This is participatory, so y'all speak up. So let me phrase it this. Let's say you have Kaiser and you don't like the doctor.